The security badge hit the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the 63rd floor like a gunshot. Evelyn Grant didn't flinch. She never did. In the glass tower that bore her name, she had fired hundreds of people, but she had never done it in front of a child before. The little girl, no more than 8 years old, stood frozen beside her father, her backpack shaped like a purple unicorn, suddenly seeming too bright, too innocent for what was happening. "Daddy?" she whispered. Caleb Moore didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in the 30 seconds it took for Evelyn to destroy 15 years of his life, he had become invisible again, the way he'd always been to people like her. She pointed toward the elevator with one manicured finger. "Security will escort you out. You never belonged here anyway." Those 9 words would cost her everything, but she didn't know that yet. None of them did. If you want to see how one man's quiet dignity brought an empire to its knees and then saved it from complete destruction, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and your support means the world to me. Now, let's begin. The Grant Tower rose above the San Francisco skyline like a monument to ambition. 78 floors of steel and glass that reflected clouds during the day and glittered like a diamond at night. Inside its walls, fortunes were made and lost before lunch. Careers were built on single decisions. Reputations crumbled with one wrong word. Evelyn Grant had built this empire with her own hands, and she ruled it the same way, with absolute precision and zero tolerance for weakness. She stood now in her corner office, the entire bay spread out behind her like a kingdom she'd conquered. Her reflection in the window showed a woman who'd stopped counting birthdays somewhere around 42, her dark hair pulled back in a style that suggested control rather than fashion, her suit tailored to communicate authority before she even opened her mouth. "The Henderson merger closes in 6 hours, her assistant Rachel said from the doorway, tablet in hand. "Legal needs your signature on the final documents." "Send them up." Evelyn didn't turn around. "And tell Tom Chen I want the quarterly reports by noon, not 12:01. Noon." "Already on your desk." "Of course they are." The hint of a smile touched Evelyn's lips. "What else?" Rachel hesitated. It was brief, barely a pause, but Evelyn caught it immediately. "What is it?" "There's a situation. In the sub-basement. One of the maintenance workers." Evelyn turned then, her expression sharpening. "Maintenance reports to facilities management. Why are you telling me?" "Because security flagged it, and because—" Rachel checked her tablet, though Evelyn suspected she already knew what was written there. "Because it's Caleb Moore. He's been here 15 years, and apparently there's been a complaint." The name meant nothing to Evelyn. 15 years, and she'd never heard it before. That told her everything she needed to know. "What kind of complaint?" "He was found accessing restricted server rooms without proper authorization. 3rd time this month." Evelyn's jaw tightened. The Henderson merger was worth $3.2 billion. Every system in this building needed to be locked down tight until the ink dried on those contracts. One leak, one whisper to the wrong person, and the whole deal could collapse. "Fire him." "Ma'am, his supervisor says—" "Did I ask what his supervisor says?" Evelyn's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "We have protocols for a reason. If he can't follow them, he doesn't work here. Make it happen." Rachel nodded and disappeared, already making calls before she reached the elevator. Evelyn returned to her window, her mind already 3 moves ahead. The Henderson merger would position Grant Industries as the dominant player in West Coast tech infrastructure. After that would come the New York expansion, then international markets. Every piece had to be perfect. Every person had to be reliable. There was no room for wildcards. 15 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a message from security. "Moore has been located, bringing him up now." Evelyn frowned. "Up here?" The response came immediately. "His daughter is with him. She's upset. Thought you should know." Something cold settled in Evelyn's chest, but she pushed it aside. Business was business. Children didn't change the rules, they just made following them more important. If Moore had put his job at risk, that was his choice, not hers. She was reviewing the Henderson contracts when her office door opened without a knock. Roger Patterson from security entered first, his expression uncomfortable in a way that immediately set Evelyn on edge. Behind him came a man she didn't recognize, mid-40s maybe, wearing maintenance coveralls with more stitched above the pocket, his hands rough and calloused. His face was weathered in the way that came from actual work rather than expensive skincare, and his eyes were the kind of steady gray that didn't look away. And behind him, holding his hand with white-knuckled intensity, was the girl. She had her father's eyes and someone else's delicate features, her dark hair pulled back in two braids that were starting to come loose. The purple unicorn backpack on her shoulders looked homemade, carefully stitched but slightly crooked. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "Mr. Moore," Evelyn said, standing behind her desk like a judge behind a bench. "Do you know why you're here?" Caleb's voice was quiet but clear. "I have an idea." "Then you know you've been accessing restricted areas without authorization." "I had authorization." He didn't sound defensive, just factual. "My supervisor assigned me to check the server room cooling systems. They've been running hot for 3 weeks. I documented every entry in the maintenance logs." Well, Roger shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, his supervisor confirms that, but the badge access records show that he used an override code that was supposed to be deactivated 2 years ago," Evelyn interrupted. She'd done her research in the past 15 minutes. That was how she worked, faster and more thoroughly than anyone expected. A code that provides access to sensitive areas during non-business hours, when no one else is around to verify what you're actually doing. "The cooling system doesn't care what time it is," Caleb said. "It fails at 2 a.m. the same as 2 p.m. And if those servers go down during your merger, you lose everything." The little girl squeezed his hand tighter. Evelyn's eyes flicked to her, then back to Caleb. "Did you bring your daughter to work today?" "It's parent visiting day at her school. I signed up 6 months ago." His voice remained level, but something flickered in his eyes. "I was going to show her the rooftop garden during lunch." "The rooftop garden is a restricted area for employees and their families on designated days," Caleb said. "Today is designated." He was right. Evelyn had approved the program herself 3 years ago as part of the company's family-friendly image campaign. She'd never actually attended one. "That doesn't change the fact that you've been violating security protocols," she said. "In a building this size, with this much at stake, we can't afford loose ends." "I'm not a loose end." For the first time, Caleb's voice carried an edge. "I'm the person who keeps this building running when everyone else goes home. I'm the one who notices when a circuit breaker is about to fail, when a water pipe is corroding, when the backup generators haven't been tested properly. I've worked here for 15 years, and I've never missed a shift, never filed a complaint, never asked for anything except the chance to do my job right." "And in those 15 years," Evelyn said coldly, "did you ever think to get your access credentials properly updated to follow the chain of command, to do things the way they're supposed to be done?" Caleb's jaw worked for a moment. "I tried. 6 different requests to facilities management, all of them flagged as low priority and pushed to next quarter. Eventually, I just kept doing what needed to be done. With an unauthorized override code, with the only tool I had." They stared at each other across the massive desk. Outside the windows, the city glittered in the late morning sun, indifferent to the small drama playing out 73 floors above the street. The little girl, Lily, Evelyn remembered from the file, tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, can we go see the garden now?" Caleb's expression softened instantly, all the steel in his eyes transforming into something achingly gentle. "Not today, sweetheart." "But you promised." "I know, I'm sorry." Evelyn felt something twist in her chest, but she'd built her empire by making hard decisions other people couldn't stomach. This was just another one. "Mr. Moore, I'm terminating your employment effective immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay and your accrued vacation time. Security will escort you from the building." Lily's eyes went wide. "What does that mean?" Caleb knelt down beside his daughter, still holding her hand. "It means we're going home, baby." "But what about the garden? What about your job?" "The job's done." He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "It's okay." "It's not okay." Tears were starting now, her voice rising. "You didn't do anything wrong. Tell her, Daddy. Tell her you didn't do anything wrong." "Lily, tell her." Evelyn felt every eye in the room on her. Roger had gone pale. Rachel had appeared in the doorway and looked like she wanted to disappear. Even her own reflection in the window behind her seemed to be judging her. But business was business. Rules were rules. If she made an exception now, where would it end? Mr. Patterson, please escort Mr. Moore and his daughter to the exit. Make sure they retrieve any personal belongings from his locker. She turned back to her computer screen, the dismissal clear. That will be all. Caleb stood slowly. He didn't argue, didn't plead, just reached down and unclipped the badge from his belt, the same badge he'd worn for 15 years, and set it on her desk with a small final click. Come on, Lily, he said quietly. Let's go home. No! The girl pulled against his hand, her face red and streaming with tears. No, no, no! It's not fair. You work so hard, Daddy. You're always fixing things. You're the best. Baby, please. She's mean. She's a mean, terrible person, and I hate her. The words hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn's hand had frozen on her mouse. She looked up slowly and met Lily's eyes, 8 years old, full of fury and heartbreak, and an absolute certainty that her father was the best man in the world and everyone else was wrong. For just a moment, Evelyn saw herself at that age, saw the tower before it was built, when it was just a dream and a stack of rejected loan applications, saw her own father, who'd believed in her when no one else did, who'd mortgaged everything to give her a start, saw the man he'd been before the stress and the late nights and the endless struggle had killed him at 53, 6 months before the first Grant building opened its doors. Then the moment passed. Security, she said quietly. Now. Roger moved forward, his expression apologetic. Mr. Moore, please. Caleb picked Lily up. She was getting too big for it, really, but he lifted her like she weighed nothing, and turned toward the door. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing. They were halfway to the elevator when Evelyn's voice cut across the office. Mr. Moore. He stopped but didn't turn around. You never belonged here anyway. She didn't mean to say it. The words just came, pulled from some deep well of defensiveness and old wounds, and the need to be right even when being right felt wrong. Caleb's shoulders stiffened. For a moment she thought he might say something, might turn around and tell her exactly what he thought of her and her empire and her rules that protected nothing except her own fear. But he didn't. He just carried his daughter to the elevator and disappeared behind the closing doors. Evelyn stood alone in her office, the silence suddenly deafening. Her badge still sat on the desk where he'd placed it, 15 years of service reduced to a piece of plastic and metal worth less than the parking validation tickets in her drawer. She picked it up, turned it over, saw the photo ID from when he'd started, younger then, his hair darker, his face less weathered. He'd been smiling in the picture, just slightly, like someone who was grateful for the opportunity and determined to prove himself worthy of it. She dropped the badge in her trash can and returned to her contracts. The Henderson merger wouldn't close itself. 3 hours later, every light in Grant Tower went out. It happened all at once. Not a flicker, not a gradual dimming, but a sudden and absolute darkness that swallowed 78 floors in the span of a heartbeat. Emergency lights should have kicked in within seconds. They didn't. Evelyn's computer died mid-sentence, her screens going black before she could save the document she'd been editing. The city view vanished, replaced by her own pale reflection in the glass. Somewhere down the hall, someone screamed. She grabbed her phone. Dead. Not out of battery, completely dead, like the power had been physically cut. The silence was worse than the darkness. In a building that hummed with constant activity, servers running, HVAC systems breathing, elevators moving, thousands of people working, the sudden absence of sound felt like being buried alive. Rachel's voice came from somewhere near the door. Miss Grant? I'm here. What happened? I don't know. Everything just stopped. Evelyn moved carefully toward her desk drawer, found the flashlight she kept for emergencies, and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating Rachel's frightened face. Get to the security office. Find out what's going on. The elevators. Take the stairs. Go. Rachel disappeared into the darkness. Evelyn stood in her office, the flashlight beam moving across familiar territory that suddenly felt alien. Her empire, brought to its knees by a power outage. It was almost funny. Except it wasn't funny at all. Because the Henderson merger was closing in 3 hours, and every single piece of it, every contract, every verification, every electronic signature ran through the servers in this building. Servers that were now dead. Her radio crackled, the old emergency system that ran on battery backup. All personnel, this is security. We have a complete power failure affecting the entire building. Emergency systems are not responding. Please remain calm and stay in your current location until further notice. Roger's voice, trying to sound authoritative and failing miserably. Evelyn grabbed her emergency radio from the desk drawer. Patterson, this is Grant. What's the status? Static then. Ma'am, we don't know yet. Main power is down, backup generators aren't responding, and the emergency systems won't initialize. It's like the whole building just died. That's not possible. We have multiple redundancies. I know, ma'am. I'm looking at the system panel right now, and according to the diagnostics we're getting on battery power, everything should be working, but it's not. Evelyn's mind raced. The Henderson merger. I know. We're trying to get auxiliary power to the server rooms, but without the main system, we can't even access them. The magnetic locks on the secure doors are all frozen. Override them manually. We're trying, but Roger's voice cut off, replaced by shouting in the background. When he came back, he sounded shaken. Ma'am, we have people trapped in the elevators. 6 cars, maybe 20 people total, and we can't get them out without power to the emergency release systems. The cold that had settled in Evelyn's chest earlier returned, now spreading through her entire body. How long until the fire department arrives? They're on their way, but they're saying it could be hours before they can reach everyone. The building's too tall for their standard equipment. They need special gear. Hours. The merger would be dead by then, and people, her employees, were trapped in steel boxes suspended hundreds of feet in the air, probably terrified, definitely running out of air. She thought of Lily Moore, crying in her father's arms. You're mean, I hate you. Patterson, get me a full damage report. I want to know what failed and why. And get me whoever's in charge of building maintenance. Another pause. That would be Frank Delgado, ma'am. He's the facilities manager. Get him on the radio, now. It took 3 minutes. 3 minutes of listening to panicked chatter on the emergency channels, of hearing someone in elevator 4 starting to hyperventilate, of feeling her empire crumbling around her like sand. Then Frank's voice crackled through. Ms. Grant, this is Delgado. Tell me what happened. I don't know. We had a maintenance check scheduled for next week. All systems were green this morning, and then he made a sound of frustration. It's like someone just flipped a switch and turned off the entire building. That's not possible with our systems. I know. That's what I'm saying. Unless someone knew exactly which breakers to trip and in which order to completely bypass all the safeties and redundancies, this shouldn't be possible. Something clicked in Evelyn's mind. A memory from 3 hours ago. The cooling systems have been running hot for 3 weeks. If those servers go down during your merger, you lose everything. Delgado, she said slowly, who handles the deep maintenance, the systems level work? That's mostly automated now. We have technicians who handle the regular stuff, but for the complex diagnostics, we've been outsourcing to... Before the outsourcing, who did it before? Silence. Delgado. We had a guy, Caleb Moore. He knew these systems better than anyone, but he was terminated this morning. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Get me his file. His full employment record. Now. Ma'am, I'm not sure. Now. She heard typing, then Delgado's breathing changed. Oh. What? Moore didn't just do maintenance. Before he worked here, he was Ms. Grant. He was a senior electrical engineer at Prometheus Systems. Designed commercial building automation for 15 years before some kind of family emergency forced him to relocate. He took the maintenance job here because it offered better hours for a single parent. He's been overqualified from day one. Evelyn closed her eyes. I'm the person who keeps this building running when everyone else goes home. I'm the one who notices when a circuit breaker is about to fail. What happened to his family? She heard herself ask. Paper rustling. Wife died 7 years ago. Cancer. He's been raising his daughter alone. She has some kind of learning disability, requires special therapy that's expensive. His insurance notes show regular claims for educational support services. Every word was a knife. She'd fired a widowed father who'd sacrificed his career to care for his disabled daughter. She'd done it in front of that daughter. She'd told him he never belonged, and now the building he'd kept running for 15 years was dying. Can we fix this without him? The question tasted like ash. Delgado's laugh was bitter. The outsourcing company we use, they're based in Denver. Even if we could get them on the phone, even if they could diagnose the problem remotely, which they can't because our communication systems are down, it would take them 8 hours minimum to get a team here. And that's assuming they even understand what's wrong. Moore wrote half the custom code for our automation systems. He's the only one who really knows how everything connects. Evelyn looked out at the darkened city. 78 floors of steel and glass, powerless. Thousands of people depending on her. A billion-dollar deal dying by the minute. And somewhere out there, in an apartment she'd never seen, a man she'd just destroyed was probably holding his daughter and wondering how he'd make rent. She pressed the radio button. Get me his address. Ma'am, you heard me? Caleb Moore's home address. And get me a car. Ms. Grant, the garage doors are electronic, without power. Then I'll walk. Just get me his address. Rachel's voice cut in. Ms. Grant, you can't leave. The fire department needs this building working, and I need Caleb Moore. That's the beginning and end of it. She was already moving toward the stairs, flashlight in hand. Get me his address and tell security to keep everyone calm. I'll be back with someone who can actually fix this. She didn't wait for a response. 73 floors down in complete darkness, and every step was a mile. But she'd built this tower. She could damn well climb down from it. The stairwell was chaos. People huddled on the landings, flashlights from phones creating small pools of light in the overwhelming dark. Some were crying. Others were trying to be brave. All of them looked to her as she passed, like she had answers. She didn't even slow down. 59th floor. Her legs were already burning. 43rd floor. Someone grabbed her arm. Tom Chen, his face pale in the flashlight beam. Ms. Grant, the Henderson people are calling. What should I tell them? Tell them we'll have it fixed within the hour. How can you possibly... Trust me, Tom. She kept moving. 27th floor. Her security director caught up to her, breathing hard. Ms. Grant, the fire department says we need to evacuate. It's not safe to keep people in. If we evacuate, we lose the merger. We lose client confidence. We lose everything. She looked at him. How many people are trapped in the elevators? 23. And how long until the fire department can get them out? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. We fix the power. We save everyone. That's the only option. Ground floor. The lobby was packed with employees who'd made it down, all of them blocking the exits. Evelyn pushed through, ignoring the questions shouted at her. Outside, the November air hit her like a slap. She'd left her coat upstairs. Didn't matter. A taxi was pulling up, and she practically dove into it. Where to? The driver asked. She read the address from her phone, one of the few things with enough battery to still work, a neighborhood she'd never been to, in a part of the city her driver probably knew better than she did. And hurry, she added. The driver looked at her in the rearview mirror. This woman in a $1,000 suit, no coat, hair coming loose, breathing like she'd run a marathon. You okay, lady? Just drive. He drove. What? The apartment building was exactly what she'd expected. Old but maintained, the kind of place where rent was manageable but nothing was new. She found his unit number on the directory and climbed 3 flights of stairs that felt like nothing after 73 floors in the dark. She knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Harder. The door opened and Caleb Moore stood there in a t-shirt and jeans, looking at her like she was a hallucination. Behind him, Lily's voice called out, "Who is it, Daddy?" "Nobody," he said, starting to close the door. Evelyn caught it with her hand. "Please, I need your help." "You need a lot of things, Ms. Grant. Help from me isn't one of them." The tower is down. Complete power failure. 23 people trapped in elevators. The Henderson merger is dying, and every engineer we have says you're the only person who can fix it. Something flickered in his eyes. Sounds like a you problem. It's a them problem. Those people trapped in the dark didn't fire you. They don't even know who you are. But they're scared, and they're running out of air, and they need someone who actually knows what they're doing. Caleb's jaw worked. You told me I never belonged there. I was wrong. The two words seemed to cost her everything. I was wrong, she repeated, about you, about what you do, about what matters. I was wrong about all of it, and now people are paying the price. She met his eyes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to come back. I'm asking you to save people who don't deserve to suffer because I made a mistake. Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked back into the apartment where Lily had appeared in the doorway, her eyes still red from crying. Daddy? Is that the mean lady? Yeah, baby, it is. What does she want? Caleb looked back at Evelyn. Good question. What do you want, Ms. Grant? Really? Evelyn thought of the tower standing dark against the sky, thought of Tom Chen's panicked face, thought of 23 people trapped in steel boxes counting their breaths, thought of herself at 8 years old, believing her father could fix anything. I want, she said slowly, to not be the villain in your daughter's story. Something changed in Caleb's expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something. Wait here, he said, and disappeared into the apartment. Evelyn stood in the hallway, listening to low voices inside. Caleb's steady tone, Lily's higher pitch, asking questions. Then silence. The door opened again. Caleb had his work boots on and was carrying a heavy toolbox. Lily's staying with our neighbor, Mrs. Chen. I told her I'd be back in a few hours. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He moved past her toward the stairs. You might not like what I find. They walked to the street in silence. The taxi was still waiting. Evelyn had promised the driver double fare, and they climbed in. As the car pulled away from the curb, Caleb finally spoke. You really think I can fix it? Delgado says the system is completely dead. No response from any backups, like someone knew exactly which switches to flip to kill everything. Caleb's expression darkened. The cooling systems. What about them? I've been filing reports for 3 weeks about the temperature spikes in server room C. Kept getting told it was scheduled for next quarter. But if those systems were running hot enough, and if someone knew which circuits were already stressed, he shook his head. You wouldn't need to sabotage anything. You just need to wait for the right moment and trip the right breaker. The cascade failure would do the rest. But you can fix it? He looked out the window at the city passing by. Maybe. If I'm right about what happened, if the damage isn't too severe, if we're not too late. That's a lot of ifs. Yeah. He turned to look at her. It is. The tower came into view, dark and silent against the evening sky. Emergency vehicles were clustered at its base, their lights painting the street in red and blue. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. One more thing, Caleb said as the taxi pulled up. When this is over, if I fix it, I don't want my job back. The words hit harder than expected. Understood. I want something else. Name it. I want you to actually see the people who work for you, not just the executives, not just the people in the meetings, all of them, the security guards, the cleaning crew, the maintenance workers, the people who keep your empire running while you're busy building it higher. He met her eyes. I want you to know their names. Evelyn swallowed hard. Done. They got out of the taxi. Roger Patterson was waiting at the entrance, looking relieved and terrified in equal measure. Ms. Grant, thank God. The situation is getting worse. One of the people in Elevator 4 is having some kind of medical episode, and he saw Caleb and froze. Mr. Moore? He's here to fix it, Evelyn said. Give him whatever he needs. But he doesn't have clearance. He has my clearance. Now move. They swept into the building, Caleb already barking questions at Roger about which systems had failed first, what sounds people had heard, whether there had been any warning signs. Within 30 seconds, he'd transformed from the quiet man she'd fired into someone who knew exactly what he was doing and wasn't going to waste time being polite about it. They reached the basement access, and Caleb pulled open the panel that controlled building power distribution. Even in the darkness, with only flashlights to see by, his hands moved with absolute confidence. There, he said, pointing, and there, and there. Someone knew exactly which breakers would create a cascade if they all failed simultaneously. This wasn't an accident. Evelyn felt ice in her veins. Sabotage? Maybe, Or maybe just years of deferred maintenance finally catching up. He pulled out a voltage tester. Either way, we've got about 20 minutes before the backup batteries on the elevator brake systems die. After that, those people aren't trapped anymore. They're in free fall. What do you need? Caleb was already moving, his toolbox open, pulling out equipment she didn't recognize. I need everyone out of this room except Patterson. I need you to get on the radio and tell those people in the elevators that help is coming. And I need you to pray I'm as good as I used to be. Evelyn started to leave, then paused. Caleb? He looked up. For what it's worth, your daughter was right about everything. His expression softened, just slightly. I know. Now let me work. She left him there in the darkness, surrounded by tools and sparking wires, and climbed back toward her office to do the only thing she could, keep her people calm while the man she'd destroyed tried to save them all. The clock was ticking, and somewhere far above, in a steel box suspended in the dark, 23 people waited to see if invisible hands would bring them home. Evelyn's hands were shaking as she pressed the radio button. She'd faced down hostile boardrooms, weathered financial crises that would have broken lesser companies, stared down investors who thought a woman couldn't build an empire. But standing in her darkened office, knowing that 23 lives hung in the balance 70 floors below, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine fear. This is Evelyn Grant, she said into the radio, her voice steady despite everything. To everyone trapped in the elevators, help is here. We have our best person working on the problem right now, and you're going to be fine. I need you to stay calm, conserve your air, and trust me. You will get out of there. Static crackled back, then a trembling voice, young, female, terrified. How long? Please, how long? Soon. I promise you, soon. She didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if Caleb could actually fix what had broken. But she said it anyway, because sometimes leadership meant lying with conviction when the truth was too terrible to speak. Rachel appeared in the doorway, her face ghostly in the emergency lighting. Ms. Grant, the fire department is asking for building schematics. They want to know if there's any way to manually access the elevator shafts from above. Tell them we're handling it internally. They're insisting, Rachel. Evelyn's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. I have an engineer in the basement who knows this building better than the people who designed it. The fire department's equipment can't reach the upper floors without setting up for hours, and we don't have hours. So tell them thank you for their concern, but we're solving this ourselves. Rachel disappeared. Evelyn stood at her window, looking down at the street where emergency lights still flashed like a heartbeat. Somewhere down there, Caleb Moore was either performing a miracle or confirming that she'd destroyed everything that mattered. Her phone buzzed, somehow still clinging to the last shreds of battery life. A text from Tom Chen. Henderson's lawyers are asking questions. What do I tell them? She typed back, tell them we'll be operational within the hour. If they want to pull out, that's their choice. But they'll regret missing the opportunity. It was a bluff, a complete, audacious bluff. But it was all she had. Another message, this one from her board chairman. Evelyn, what the hell is happening? CNN is showing your building going dark. We need a statement. She didn't respond to that one. Couldn't. What would she say? That she'd fired the one person who could have prevented this? That her empire was literally powerless because she'd been too proud to see what was right in front of her? The radio crackled. Roger's voice, tense with barely controlled panic. Ms. Grant, elevator 4. The medical situation is getting worse. We can hear her on the emergency line. She's having trouble breathing. Is there anyone with medical training in that elevator? There's a guy who says he took a CPR class 5 years ago. Evelyn closed her eyes. Put me through to them. A click, then the sound of ragged breathing and muffled crying. Someone was praying in the background. Another voice was trying to lead a breathing exercise, his own panic bleeding through despite the attempt at calm. This is Evelyn Grant, she said. Who's having the medical emergency? A man's voice shaking. It's Sarah. Sarah Chen from accounting. She's having some kind of panic attack or asthma attack. I can't tell which. She can't catch her breath. Is she on any medication? She has an inhaler, but she used it already and it's not helping. Oh God, she's turning blue. Evelyn's mind raced. Sarah Chen, 26 years old, recently promoted, had sent Evelyn a thank you note that Evelyn had barely glanced at before filing it away. "Listen to me," Evelyn said, pouring every ounce of authority she possessed into her voice. "Sarah is panicking, which is making it harder to breathe, which is making her panic more. I need whoever's closest to her to hold her hand and look her in the eyes. Can you do that?" Yes, okay, I'm holding her hand." "Good. Now tell her she's safe. Tell her the air is fine, there's plenty of oxygen, and help is coming. Make her believe it." "But what if—" "Make her believe it. That's an order." She heard him repeating her words, his voice steadier now that he had a task. Heard Sarah's gasping breath slowly, incrementally, begin to even out. "It's working," the man said, wonder in his voice. She's breathing better. Keep talking to her. Keep her calm. And know that the man fixing this building right now is doing it because he understands what it means to protect someone you care about. He won't let you down." She hoped that was true. Prayed it was true, even though she'd told Caleb not to pray because she didn't want religion in her stories. But this wasn't a story anymore, was it? This was real life, and real consequences, and real people whose lives depended on whether she'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. The radio crackled again. "Ms. Grant, this is Delgado. Moore wants to talk to you, says it's urgent." Her heart lurched. "Put him through." A pause, then Caleb's voice, tight with concentration. "I found the problem. You're not going to like it. Tell me." The cascade failure was triggered by a manual override. Someone went into the system and deliberately created a scenario where one specific circuit failure would take down everything else. It's elegant, actually, almost beautiful, if it wasn't so destructive. Evelyn felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "Who?" "I don't know yet, but whoever did this knew these systems intimately. This wasn't some outside hacker or disgruntled employee randomly sabotaging things. This was someone who understood exactly how everything connects, who had access to restricted areas, and who knew when to strike for maximum impact." "During the Henderson merger." "Exactly. They wanted to destroy your credibility, tank the deal, maybe even force the company into a position where it could be acquired for pennies on the dollar. It's corporate warfare, Ms. Grant. And it's working." She gripped the edge of her desk. "Can you fix it?" "I can restore power, yes. But it's going to be rough. The systems are going to come back online in stages, and there might be some surges. Tell everyone to unplug anything valuable and step away from electrical outlets." "How long?" 10 minutes if I'm lucky, 20 if I'm not." "And Ms. Grant?" "When the power comes back, you need to find out who did this, because they're still in your building, and they're going to try again." The connection cut off before she could respond. Evelyn grabbed her radio and started issuing orders. Clear the floors near electrical panels. Get people away from computers. Prepare for potential power surges. Around her, the building seemed to hold its breath, waiting. She thought about what Caleb had said. Someone with intimate knowledge of the systems. Someone with access. Someone who understood the Henderson merger's importance and wanted to destroy it. Her mind cataloged possibilities. Competitors who'd been shut out of the deal. Former employees with grudges. Board members who'd opposed her aggressive expansion strategy. The list was long, and everyone on it had motive. But only a few had means. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Tom Chen. "Henderson's people are threatening to walk. They're saying we're not stable enough for this kind of partnership. I'm running out of excuses." She stared at the message, then made a decision that would either save everything or confirm her complete failure. She called Tom directly. Somehow, miraculously, the call connected. "Tom, listen to me very carefully. Get the Henderson team on a conference call. All of them, including their CEO. Tell them Evelyn Grant has something to say, and they're going to want to hear it. Ms. Grant, I don't think... Just do it. 5 minutes." She hung up and turned to Rachel, who was hovering in the doorway looking terrified. "Get me every member of our executive team who's still in the building. Conference room B, now." "But there's no power." "Then we'll meet in the dark. Move." 3 minutes later, Evelyn stood in a conference room lit only by emergency lights and phone flashlights, facing a dozen executives who looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Tom had somehow managed to get the Henderson people on a conference call using a satellite phone someone had pulled from an emergency kit. "Gentlemen," Evelyn said, her voice carrying the same steel that had built this empire, "I imagine you're concerned about the current situation." James Henderson's voice came through the speaker, dripping with skepticism. "Concerned is putting it mildly, Ms. Grant. We're about to commit $3 billion to a partnership with a company that apparently can't keep its own lights on. You're right to be concerned. What happened here today was a deliberate act of sabotage designed to destroy our credibility and tank this merger. Someone with intimate knowledge of our systems attacked us at our most vulnerable moment." Silence on the line. Then, "You're admitting you have a security breach?" "I'm admitting that we're valuable enough to be worth attacking. And I'm telling you that the person currently fixing this breach is someone I fired this morning because I didn't recognize his worth until it was almost too late. I'm telling you that I made a mistake, owned it, and corrected it. That's the kind of leadership you're partnering with, the kind that admits fault and fixes problems instead of making excuses." "That's a nice speech, Ms. Grant, but—" The lights flickered. Every head in the room turned upward. The fluorescence buzzed, dimmed, then suddenly blazed to full brightness. Simultaneously, every computer in the building hummed to life. The HVAC system's distant roar resumed. Somewhere far below, elevator motors began to whir. The building was breathing again. Evelyn didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just kept her eyes on the conference phone. "As I was saying, Mr. Henderson, we identify problems and we fix them. Your $3 billion is buying partnership with a company that doesn't make excuses. Are you in or out?" The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then James Henderson laughed, actually laughed. "You've got steel nerves, Ms. Grant. I'll give you that. Send over the contracts. We'll sign tonight." The line went dead. The room erupted in relieved chatter, but Evelyn was already moving toward the door. She had to get to the basement, had to see if the elevators were actually moving, had to know if Caleb had really pulled off the impossible. She reached the elevator bank just as the doors to car 4 opened. 23 people stumbled out, some crying, some laughing, all of them looking like they'd been given a second chance at life. Sarah Chen was among them, pale but breathing steadily, supported by the man who'd held her hand in the dark. "Ms. Grant," Sarah said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you. Heard what you said on the radio, about being safe, about help coming. You were right." Evelyn felt something crack in her chest. "How are you feeling?" "Like I just survived something I shouldn't have." Sarah managed a weak smile. "But I did survive. We all did. Go home. All of you. Take tomorrow off. Paid." She didn't wait for their thanks, just headed for the stairs, taking them down 2 at a time despite her burning legs, despite the heels that were completely impractical for this kind of movement, despite everything. The basement was organized chaos. Caleb stood at the main electrical panel, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hands covered in grease and what looked like burn marks. Roger and Delgado flanked him, both looking at him like he'd just walked on water. "All systems are green," Delgado was saying, his voice shaking with relief. "Backup generators are synchronized. Emergency protocols are armed. I don't know how you did it more, but—" He stopped when he saw Evelyn. Caleb turned, his face exhausted but alert. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "Thank you," Evelyn said finally. "That doesn't begin to cover it, but thank you." Caleb wiped his hands on a rag. "The people in the elevators okay?" "They're fine, because of you." "And the merger?" "Signed, because of you." He nodded slowly, then started packing up his tools. "Then I guess we're done here." "Wait!" She crossed the room, aware of Roger and Delgado watching, not caring. "You said whoever did this is still in the building, that they'll try again." "They will. This wasn't just about money. Someone wanted to hurt you specifically." "Help me find them." Caleb's hand stilled on his toolbox. "What?" "You know these systems. You understand how someone could have accessed them, what they would have needed when they would have done it. Help me find out who sabotaged my building." She paused. "Please." "I told you I don't want my job back." "This isn't about your job. This is about making sure no one else gets trapped in an elevator because someone has a vendetta. It's about protecting the people who work here, the ones you asked me to see." Caleb studied her face for a long moment. You really don't know who did this, do you? No? Do you? I have a theory, but you're not going to like it. Tell me anyway. He glanced at Roger and Delgado. Not here. Somewhere private. They ended up in a small maintenance office on the second floor, a cramped space filled with work orders and system diagrams that Caleb clearly knew intimately. He spread several technical documents across the desk, pointing to specific notations. The override codes used to trigger the cascade, they're old. From the original building automation system installed 12 years ago, most of them were deactivated when we upgraded 5 years back, but a few remained in the system as legacy access points. You said you were using one of those codes. I was, but there were others, and according to these logs, he tapped a printout. Someone else accessed the system using a different legacy code 3 weeks ago, right when the cooling problems started. Who? Caleb's finger traced a line across the page. The access was logged under a maintenance override, which means it didn't require badge authentication. But the timestamp matches when I was off duty, and the specific terminals accessed were ones only senior facilities personnel would know about. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Delgado? Maybe, or someone he trained, or someone who had access to his credentials. Caleb leaned back. But here's what bothers me. The Henderson merger timing. How would facilities management know when to strike for maximum impact? That information doesn't flow down to the basement. It stays up in the executive suite. The implication hung in the air like smoke. You think it was someone on my team, Evelyn said slowly. I think it was someone who knew about the merger and had connections to someone with system access, a partnership. He pulled out another document. And I think they've been planning this for months. Look at these work orders. Small system degradations, minor failures that individually meant nothing but together created the perfect conditions for a catastrophic cascade. Someone was setting the stage. Evelyn's mind raced through possibilities. Her executive team, her board, people she'd trusted for years. Can you prove any of this? Not yet. But the system keeps logs of every access point, every override, every manual input. If I can cross-reference the building access records with the system logs, I might be able to establish a pattern. Find out who was where when each piece of the sabotage was put in place. How long will that take? Days? Maybe weeks. The logs are extensive, and I'll need access to secure areas I definitely don't have clearance for anymore. Evelyn pulled out her phone and fired off a text to Rachel. Within 2 minutes, Rachel appeared in the doorway with a brand new security badge. Caleb Moore, Senior Building Systems Consultant, Rachel read from the badge. Access to all areas, all hours, reporting directly to the CEO. Is this what you wanted, Ms. Grant? Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel handed the badge to Caleb, her expression carefully neutral. As she left, Evelyn could have sworn she saw the hint of a smile. Caleb stared at the badge in his hand. You can't be serious. You said you didn't want your old job back. This isn't your old job. This is a new one. Better pay, better hours, and your own office if you want it. She met his eyes. And more importantly, it's a chance to protect people. Isn't that why you came back today? I came back because people were trapped. And they'll be trapped again if we don't figure out who's behind this. You know it, and I know it. She softened her voice. I'm not asking you to forgive me for this morning. I'm asking you to help me make sure it never happens to anyone else. Caleb was quiet for a long time. Finally, he clipped the badge to his belt. I'll need access to your executive calendar. Every meeting for the past 6 months, everyone who attended, every decision made regarding building systems and the Henderson merger. You'll have it within the hour. And I'll need to interview people. Your team, security, facilities. Some of them aren't going to like answering questions from a maintenance worker. Then it's a good thing you're not a maintenance worker anymore. You're my senior consultant, and what I say goes. She paused. Unless you'd prefer a different title? The title doesn't matter. What matters is whether people will actually talk to me. They will, because I'll make it clear that obstructing your investigation is the same as obstructing me. And because, she took a breath, because I'm going to tell them the truth. That you saved this building, that you saved those people, that you're the only reason we still have a company. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do, Because your daughter was right about something else, too. You are the best. And it's past time everyone knew it. Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. I need to call Lily, he said abruptly. Let her know I'm okay. She was pretty upset when I left. Use my office. Take as long as you need. They rode the elevator up in silence. The same elevator that hours ago would have been a death trap. Now it hummed smoothly, carrying them upward like nothing had ever been wrong. Evelyn's office was still a mess, papers scattered from when the power had cut, her computer screen blank, the view of the city now dark with full night. She gestured to her desk phone. It's a direct line. No one will interrupt. Caleb picked up the phone, hesitated, then dialed. Evelyn moved to the window to give him privacy, but she could still hear his voice. Hey, baby. It's me. No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I know I was gone longer than I said, but there was a problem and I had to fix it. The building lost power. Remember I told you about the systems I work on? Well, they broke and people needed help. Yeah, just like when our heater broke last winter and I fixed it. Same thing, just bigger. Yes, she's here. The lady from this morning? I don't know yet, Lily. It's complicated. Because adults make mistakes sometimes, even when they're in charge of important things. I know, baby. I know she was mean. But she came to apologize, and she asked me to help, and I did. Because that's what we do, right? We help people even when it's hard. I love you too. Mrs. Chen's going to give you dinner, and I'll be home before bedtime. I promise. Have I ever broken a promise to you? That's right. Never. So you know I mean it and... Okay. Be good. I'll see you soon. He hung up and stood there for a moment, his hand still on the receiver. She's a good kid, Evelyn said quietly. She's the best kid. Smart, brave, sees the world the way it should be instead of the way it is. He turned. She thinks people are basically good, that if you're kind to them, they'll be kind back, that the world is fair. You don't want her to lose that. I don't want her to learn what I learned, that you can work hard and do everything right and still be thrown away because you're not important enough to matter. That kindness is a weakness people exploit. That the world isn't fair and never will be. Evelyn felt each word like a physical blow. I taught her that today, didn't I? When I fired you in front of her. You showed her how power works, how the people at the top see the people at the bottom. Yeah, you did that. I'm sorry, truly. Not just for the professional consequences, but for hurting her. For making her doubt that the world can be good. Caleb studied her face. You mean that? I do. Then prove it. Find who did this. Hold them accountable. Show her that powerful people can choose to do the right thing even when it's hard. He moved toward the door. I'll start reviewing the logs tonight, but I need to go home first. Put my daughter to bed. Be the one thing in her life that doesn't change. Take tomorrow morning off. Spend time with her. The investigation can wait a few hours. He paused at the door. You're different than you were this morning. Am I? This morning you were someone who'd forgotten why she built this tower. Now you're someone trying to remember. He met her eyes. I don't know which one is the real you, Ms. Grant, but I hope you figure it out. He left, and Evelyn stood alone in her office surrounded by the empire she'd built, the view she'd fought for, the power she'd accumulated, the success she'd measured in floors and contracts and quarterly reports, and all of it felt hollow. Her phone buzzed. Tom Chen, still in the building apparently. Contracts are signed. Henderson deal is done. You did it. She'd won. Saved the merger, saved the company, saved her reputation. Everything she'd been fighting for all day. So why did it feel like losing? She looked out at the city, thousands of lights, millions of people, all of them with their own struggles and dreams and daughters who believed the world could be fair. Somewhere out there, Caleb was going home to his small apartment to tuck his daughter into bed and assure her that everything was going to be okay. And somewhere in this building, someone was planning their next move. Someone who'd tried to destroy everything she'd built. Someone who was still out there, still dangerous, still believing they could bring her down. Evelyn pulled out her phone and opened her calendar. 6 months of meetings, decisions, strategy sessions. Hundreds of people who'd had access to information about the Henderson merger. Dozens who'd had opportunity to plan the sabotage. Finding the truth was going to be brutal. It would mean suspecting people she'd trusted, questioning loyalties she'd taken for granted, possibly destroying relationships she'd spent years building. But Caleb was right. If she wanted to prove that powerful people could choose to do the right thing, this was how. Not by making speeches or offering apologies, but by following through. By protecting the people who depended on her, by being worthy of a little girl's restored faith. She sat down at her desk and started making notes. Questions that needed answering, people who needed interviewing, systems that needed auditing. The investigation was going to change everything. She knew that. Knew that the truth, when she found it, might hurt worse than any sabotage. But for the first time in years, Evelyn Grant wasn't thinking about her empire. She was thinking about the man who'd saved it while she was busy building it. And about the daughter who'd called her mean and terrible and been absolutely, devastatingly right. Tomorrow, she'd start seeing people. Really seeing them. The way Caleb had asked. Tonight, she'd prepare for war. Because someone in her building thought they could win by destroying what she'd built. They were about to learn that the tower was just glass and steel. The real foundation was people. And she was done taking them for granted. The sun was barely touching the horizon when Evelyn arrived at the tower the next morning, her third cup of coffee already cooling in her hand. She'd spent most of the night cross-referencing access logs with her executive calendar, building a timeline of who knew what and when. The patterns that emerged made her stomach turn. Rachel was already at her desk, looking like she hadn't slept either. "Ms. Grant, I have those personnel files you requested. And Caleb Moore is waiting in conference room B. He said he found something." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "How long has he been here?" "Since 5 a.m. He brought his daughter with him. She's in the employee lounge watching cartoons on someone's tablet. I hope that's okay." "It's fine. Get them both breakfast, whatever they want." Evelyn headed toward the conference room, then paused. "And Rachel, thank you. For staying late yesterday, for keeping everyone calm. I don't say that enough." Rachel's expression softened. "You're welcome, Ms. Grant." Conference room B was transformed into something resembling a detective's war room. System diagrams covered every wall, printouts spread across the table, sticky notes connecting pieces of information in a web that made Evelyn's head spin. Caleb stood at the center of it all, his work shirt rumpled like he'd slept in it, which he probably had, a marker in one hand and exhaustion written across his face. "You were supposed to take the morning off," Evelyn said. "Couldn't sleep, kept thinking about the pattern." He gestured to the wall. "You need to see this." Evelyn set down her coffee and moved closer. The diagram showed the building's automation system with certain access points highlighted in red. "These are every manual override in the past 6 months," Caleb explained. "Most of them are routine, me fixing things, other maintenance staff doing their jobs. But these 12? He pointed to a cluster of red marks. "These are anomalies. They happened during off hours, used legacy codes, and each one degraded a different part of the system in a way that wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. 12 separate incidents over 6 months. Exactly. Whoever did this was patient. They knew that one big attack would get noticed, but small degradations spread out over time would look like normal wear and tear." Evelyn studied the timeline. "The first one was in June, right after we announced preliminary talks with Henderson. And the last one was 2 days ago, right before yesterday's Cascade failure." Caleb pulled out another document. "But here's what's interesting. Each of these incidents required physical access to specific terminals in restricted areas, the server room, the main electrical panel, the building automation control center, which means badge access logs, which I pulled." He handed her a printout, cross-referenced with the times of each incident. Evelyn scanned the list, her heart sinking as familiar names appeared. Tom Chen, Marcus Reeves from Legal, Jennifer Walsh from Operations, even Roger Patterson from Security. All of them had legitimate reasons to be in those areas, Caleb said quietly, but their badge swipes put them in the right place at the right time for at least some of the sabotage events. "This doesn't make sense. Tom's been with me for 8 years. Marcus helped structure the Henderson deal. Jennifer runs half the building operations. Unless that's exactly why they're perfect for this. They have access, they have knowledge, they have trust." Caleb tapped the timeline. "But here's what bothers me. These incidents required technical expertise. understanding which systems to degrade and how. Your executives might have access, but do they have the skills? Evelyn's mind raced. They'd need help, someone with engineering background, someone in facilities management, or someone who used to be. Caleb's expression darkened. I started thinking about who else has left the company recently, who might have an axe to grind. He pulled up another document, a list of terminated employees from the past year. Evelyn's blood ran cold when she saw the third name down. David Kemp, she read aloud, senior facilities engineer, terminated 8 months ago for... She stopped. For repeatedly accessing restricted systems without authorization, Caleb finished. Sound familiar? I remember this case. He claimed he was trying to prevent system failures. His supervisor said he was paranoid and insubordinate. His supervisor was Frank Delgado, who, according to these records, recommended Kemp's termination personally. Caleb pulled up an email chain. But look at what Kemp was actually reporting. Temperature fluctuations in the server rooms, unusual power draw patterns, circuit degradation in critical systems. Evelyn felt sick. He was seeing the sabotage. He was trying to stop it and got fired for his trouble 8 months ago, which is 2 months before the first sabotage incident on my timeline. You think Delgado is involved? I think Delgado has been facilities manager for 12 years. He knows every system, every access code, every vulnerability in this building. He trained most of the maintenance staff, including me. He'd know exactly how to degrade systems without triggering alerts. But why? What's his motive? Caleb was quiet for a moment. I pulled his personnel file. Did you know he was passed over for a promotion 3 years ago? VP of Building Operations. It went to Jennifer Walsh instead. Jennifer has an MBA from Stanford. Delgado doesn't have a college degree. Right. She had credentials. He had experience, and he's been watching less qualified people get promoted above him for years while he stays in the basement keeping everything running. Caleb's voice was careful, neutral. Kind of familiar, actually. The parallel hit Evelyn like a slap. You think he's doing this out of resentment? I think he's doing this because someone offered him a reason and the resources. These executive badge swipes, they weren't coincidences. Someone was running interference, making sure Delgado had access when he needed it, making sure the right people were in the right places at the right times. A conspiracy. A partnership. Caleb pointed to the timeline again. And it's still active. Yesterday's Cascade failure was too perfect, too well-timed. They knew about the Henderson deadline. They knew we'd be vulnerable. Someone fed them that information. Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from Tom Chen. Morning briefing in 20 minutes. Henderson team wants a status update on yesterday's incident. She stared at the message, then at Tom's name on Caleb's list. 8 years of trust, 8 years of loyalty, or 8 years of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I need you to keep investigating, she said, quietly. Don't let anyone know what you found. What are you going to do? I'm going to that briefing, and I'm going to see who flinches. 20 minutes later, Evelyn walked into the executive conference room where her senior team was already assembled. Tom Chen sat at his usual spot, looking tired but composed. Marcus Reeves was reviewing contracts on his tablet. Jennifer Walsh was on her phone, likely dealing with the aftermath of yesterday's crisis. Roger Patterson stood by the door, his security team having tripled since the power failure. And at the end of the table, looking uncomfortable in a suit instead of his usual maintenance coveralls, sat Frank Delgado. Frank? Evelyn said, surprised. I didn't realize you'd be joining us. Ms. Grant. He shifted in his seat. Given yesterday's events, I thought facilities management should be represented at the executive level for the debriefing. Of course. Please stay. She took her seat at the head of the table. Let's begin. Tom, status on Henderson? Tom pulled up a presentation. Contracts are signed and filed. The merger is official as of midnight last night. Henderson's team is actually impressed with how we handled the crisis. They're calling it a demonstration of our resilience under pressure. Good. Marcus, any legal exposure from yesterday? Minimal. No injuries, no permanent damage. We've drafted liability waivers for everyone who was trapped in the elevators, offering them a compensation package in exchange for signing. So far, everyone's agreed. Jennifer, building systems? Jennifer glanced at Delgado. All systems are operating normally. We've implemented additional monitoring protocols to catch any future anomalies early. Frank's team has been running diagnostics around the clock. Actually, Evelyn said carefully, I've brought in an external consultant to conduct an independent review of our systems. Someone with deep expertise in building automation. Delgado's expression flickered, just for a second, but Evelyn caught it. An external consultant? Ms. Grant, I assure you my team is more than capable. I'm sure they are, but given the scope of yesterday's failure, I want fresh eyes on the problem. Someone who can identify vulnerabilities we might have missed. Who is this consultant? Caleb Moore. You know him, I believe. He worked under your supervision for 15 years. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Tom frowned. Isn't that the maintenance worker you fired yesterday morning? That was a mistake, which I've corrected. Evelyn kept her eyes on Delgado. Mr. Moore has extensive background in electrical engineering and building automation systems. He's exactly what we need right now. Delgado's jaw tightened. Moore was terminated for repeatedly violating security protocols, using unauthorized access codes, going into restricted areas without permission. He was using those codes to maintain systems that were failing because legitimate maintenance requests were being ignored. Evelyn let that sink in. In fact, I've been reviewing maintenance logs from the past 6 months. There's a disturbing pattern of critical repairs being flagged as low priority and pushed to next quarter. Repairs that, had they been completed, might have prevented yesterday's cascade failure. We have budget constraints, Jennifer said. Not everything can be top priority. Server room cooling systems during a billion-dollar merger should have been top priority. Yet they weren't. Why is that, Frank? Delgado's face had gone pale. The cooling issues were documented. We were waiting for parts. For 3 weeks? For a system that could tank our entire operation? Ms. Grant, Tom interjected, I'm not sure this is the right forum for us. This is exactly the right forum. Because yesterday didn't happen by accident. Someone with intimate knowledge of our systems deliberately created the conditions for a catastrophic failure. Someone who knew which circuits to degrade, which safeties to bypass, which moment would cause maximum damage. She looked around the table. Someone in this room. The silence was absolute. Marcus set down his tablet slowly. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime, corporate sabotage, attempted fraud, endangerment of human lives. Evelyn pulled out her phone and brought up the timeline Caleb had created. These are 12 separate incidents over the past 6 months. Small degradations that individually meant nothing but together created yesterday's disaster. Each one required physical access to restricted areas. Each one required technical expertise. And each one corresponded with legitimate badge access from members of this team. Jennifer's expression hardened. You're saying one of us is responsible? I'm saying the evidence suggests a conspiracy. Multiple people working together. Someone with executive knowledge providing information and access. Someone with technical skills executing the sabotage. Roger stepped forward from his position by the door. Ms. Grant, if you have evidence of criminal activity, we should involve law enforcement. We will. But first, I'm giving everyone in this room a chance to come forward, to explain, to make this right before it becomes a police matter. No one moved. Then Tom Chen stood up. I think I speak for everyone when I say this is insulting. We've dedicated years to this company, sacrificed time with our families, passed up other opportunities, worked ourselves to exhaustion to make Grant Industries successful. And now you're accusing us of sabotage based on badge access logs? Everyone at this table has legitimate reasons to be in those areas. Do you have a legitimate reason to be accessing the Building Automation Control Center at 2 a.m. on a Saturday? Tom's face went rigid. I was working late. I needed to adjust the climate control in my office. The climate control that's managed through a completely different system? The one that doesn't require access to the Automation Control Center? I must have been mistaken about which terminal I used. 3 times over 2 months, always during off hours, always within 24 hours of a system degradation event? Marcus stood now too. Tom, don't say anything else. Ms. Grant, If you're accusing my colleague of a crime, he has the right to legal representation. I'm not accusing anyone yet. I'm asking questions. Evelyn's voice hardened. But I will find out what happened. And when I do, everyone involved is going to face consequences, criminal charges, civil liability, the complete destruction of their professional reputation. So I'm offering one chance, right now, to admit involvement and cooperate. The first person to come forward gets consideration. Everyone else gets prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Frank Delgado's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. I've been nothing but loyal to this company for 12 years. I've kept this building running when everyone else was too busy making deals to notice the infrastructure falling apart. And this is how you thank me? By bringing in some washed-up engineer you fired yesterday and letting him tear apart everything I've built? Frank, Jennifer started. No, I'm done. He headed for the door. You want to find someone to blame? Maybe look at your own decisions, Miss Grant. Maybe ask yourself why systems fail when maintenance budgets get cut year after year. Why good engineers like David Kemp get fired for trying to do their jobs. Why people who actually understand how things work get ignored while MBAs, who've never held a wrench, make all the decisions. Sit down, Frank. Make me. Roger moved to block the door, but Delgado was faster. He shoved past the security director and disappeared into the hallway. Evelyn was on her feet instantly. Roger, stop him. Don't let him leave the building. Roger spoke into his radio as he ran. All units, Frank Delgado is not to leave the premises. Detain him if necessary. Tom Chen was gathering his things, his movements jerky and panicked. I need to make a phone call. To your lawyer? Evelyn asked. To someone who can explain this misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is thinking you could get away with it. She nodded to Roger's backup, who'd appeared in the doorway. Mr. Chen is not to leave this floor until I say otherwise. Marcus stood slowly, his lawyer's brain clearly working through options. Ms. Grant, I strongly advise you to stop this right now. Detaining employees without cause, making accusations without evidence. You're exposing the company to massive liability. I have evidence. Badge access logs, system degradation patterns, email chains showing prior knowledge of the Henderson merger timeline. She met his eyes. And I have Caleb Moore, who can testify to exactly how the sabotage was executed. The question is, which of you was helping Delgado and why? I want my lawyer, Tom said, his voice cracking. I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer. Jennifer Walsh had gone very quiet, her eyes distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It was supposed to be controlled, a temporary disruption that would delay the merger, give us time to renegotiate terms. No one was supposed to get hurt. Every head turned toward her. Jennifer, don't, Marcus warned. It's over, Marcus. You know it is. She looked at Evelyn, her expression a mixture of defiance and desperation. The Henderson deal was bad for the company. I tried to tell you that. Tried to show you the projections, the risks, the long-term exposure. But you wouldn't listen. You never listen. Evelyn felt her world tilt. So you decided to sabotage it? I decided to protect what we've built. Henderson's terms would have gutted our independence, made us a subsidiary of their operation. Everything you've worked for, everything we've all worked for, gone, absorbed into their corporate structure. That's not your decision to make. Someone had to make it. You were so focused on growth, on expansion, on building higher and faster that you couldn't see what you were sacrificing. Jennifer's voice rose. I've been with you for 6 years, Evelyn. I've watched you make brilliant decisions and terrible ones, and this was going to be the worst. So yes, I reached out to Frank. Yes, I gave him access and information. Yes, I helped plan a disruption that would force Henderson to walk away by putting 23 people in mortal danger. That wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be a rolling brownout, a few hours of inconvenience. Frank said he could control it. Frank lied to you, or you lied to yourself. Either way, people nearly died. Tom Chen's voice came out strangled. I didn't know. About the elevators, about the danger. Jennifer said it was just going to be a power glitch, something that would make Henderson nervous enough to renegotiate. I swear if I'd known, you would have done it anyway, Evelyn said coldly, because you've always resented the Henderson deal. You wanted to lead the expansion into New York yourself, wanted the recognition, the promotion that would come with it. But Henderson insisted on bringing their own team, so you helped Jennifer undermine the entire merger rather than accept a supporting role. That's not... Tom stopped, his face crumbling. I worked so hard. 8 years of 18-hour days, missing my kids' birthdays, my anniversary, all for this company. And when it finally mattered, when we finally had a chance at something historic, I was sidelined. So you tried to destroy it. I tried to save it. We all did. The Henderson deal was going to ruin us. The Henderson deal was going to make us the dominant player on the West Coast. It was going to set us up for national expansion. It was going to secure jobs for everyone in this building. Evelyn's voice shook with fury. And you nearly killed it because you couldn't handle not being the star. Marcus Reeves cleared his throat. For the record, I had no knowledge of any sabotage plan. My involvement was limited to structuring the merger terms. But you suspected something, Evelyn said. You're too smart not to have seen the signs. The delayed maintenance, the convenient system failures, the timing of yesterday's cascade. Suspicion isn't proof, and lawyers don't accuse their clients without evidence. But they do protect them. They do make sure evidence disappears, that they do structure deals that benefit themselves while appearing to serve the company. She studied his face. What was your angle, Marcus? What did you stand to gain? His expression never changed. I'd like my lawyer now. Roger's radio crackled. Sir, we have a situation. Delgado tried to access the server room. When security prevented him, he pulled a fire alarm and is attempting to exit through the emergency stairwell. Evelyn was already moving. Lock down the building, no one in or out, and get Caleb Moore up here now. She ran toward the stairwell, her heels abandoned somewhere in the conference room. Behind her, she could hear Roger shouting orders into his radio, Tom Chen protesting his innocence, Jennifer Walsh starting to cry. But all of that faded as she hit the stairwell and saw Frank Delgado 3 flights down, moving fast. Frank, stop! He looked up, his face twisted with something between rage and desperation. Stay away from me. You can't run. Building's locked down. Where are you going to go? Anywhere but here. I'm not taking the fall for this alone. He kept descending, and Evelyn followed, her breath coming in gasps. They spiraled down flight after flight, the stairwell echoing with their footsteps. Jennifer already confessed, Evelyn called down. Tom's calling his lawyer. Marcus is protecting himself. You're the only one without a deal, Frank. Last chance to cooperate. Cooperate? He laughed bitterly. You mean confess to something that wasn't my fault? I didn't start this. I was just trying to fix problems that wouldn't exist if this company actually valued the people who keep it running. So you endangered lives to prove a point. I tried to prevent a disaster. The Henderson merger would have led to mass layoffs, restructuring, outsourcing. Do you know how many maintenance jobs would have been eliminated? How many people like me would have been replaced by contractors who don't know these systems and don't care? That's not true. Henderson's term specifically protected current employment for 2 years. 2 years, and then what? Then we're expendable. He'd reached a landing and spun to face her. You people in your offices with your degrees and your stock options, you never think about us. The ones in the basement, the ones who show up at midnight when a pipe bursts, the ones who know this building better than you know your own home. We're invisible until something breaks, and then we're inconvenient. Evelyn stopped on the landing above him, breathing hard. You're right. Frank blinked. What? You're right. I didn't see you. Didn't see Caleb. Didn't see any of the people who actually make this building work. I was so focused on building higher that I forgot about the foundation holding everything up. But don't patronize me. I'm not. I'm admitting I was wrong. About priorities, about value, about what actually matters. She took a careful step down. But that doesn't excuse what you did. Those people in the elevators, they're not executives. They're administrative assistants and junior analysts and interns, people just trying to do their jobs. You nearly killed them to make a point about being undervalued. I didn't mean for that to happen. Jennifer said, Jennifer lied, or she was lied to, or everyone just told themselves comfortable lies until the truth became a 23-person disaster. Another step. But you knew, Frank. You knew exactly how dangerous a cascade failure could be. You designed safety systems to prevent exactly what you caused yesterday. His face crumpled. I thought I could control it. Thought I could trigger a manageable failure that would just delay things long enough for cooler heads to prevail. But the degradation was worse than I calculated. The redundancies didn't hold, and by the time I realized how bad it was, the override codes were locked out. Because you'd used them all up sabotaging the system. Yes? The word came out broken, and I couldn't fix it. I tried. I swear I tried, but I degraded too many systems, cut too many corners, and then Moore came back and did in 20 minutes what I couldn't do in an hour, because he actually understood what I'd destroyed. Evelyn felt an unexpected wave of pity. You could have asked for help, could have told me about the cooling issues, the circuit degradation, the maintenance backlog. I would have listened. No, you wouldn't have. I've been filing reports for 12 years, asking for proper budgets, begging for upgrades before things fail catastrophically. And every single time, it gets pushed to next quarter because buildings don't generate revenue. We're just an expense to be minimized. Not anymore, the voice came from above them. Caleb stood on the landing where Evelyn had started, his daughter Lily beside him holding his hand. The little girl's eyes were wide and serious. Mr. Moore, Frank said quietly, I wondered when you'd show up. You trained me, Frank, taught me everything I know about these systems. Why would you destroy what you helped build? Because I was tired of being invisible, tired of watching people like you get fired while I had to keep pretending everything was fine, tired of being expendable. He looked at Evelyn. Tired of being told I never belonged. The parallel was intentional, and it landed like a punch. Lily's voice cut through the tension, clear and achingly sincere. My daddy says everyone belongs. Even when other people can't see them, he says invisible doesn't mean worthless. Frank's eyes filled with tears. Your daddy's a good man, sweetheart. Better than me. He also says, Lily continued solemnly, that when you make a mistake, you have to fix it. Even if it's scary, even if people are mad at you, because that's how you stop being the bad guy in the story. Caleb squeezed his daughter's hand. She's right, Frank. You can't run from this, but you can make it right. Help us understand what happened. Testify against whoever pressured you into this. Make sure no one else gets hurt. Frank Delgado stood in the stairwell, surrounded by the people whose lives he'd endangered, and slowly sank down to sit on the steps. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll tell you everything. They gathered in Conference Room B, the same room where Caleb had built his wall of evidence just hours earlier. Frank Delgado sat at the table with his hands folded, looking smaller somehow than he had in the stairwell. Roger Patterson had 2 security officers stationed at the door. Jennifer Walsh was there too, her earlier composure shattered into something raw and desperate. Tom Chen sat as far from everyone as possible, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. Marcus Reeves hadn't come. He'd invoked his right to counsel and refused to participate without formal charges being filed. Evelyn stood at the window, her back to the room, trying to process the wreckage of everything she'd built. Her senior team, people she'd trusted, promoted, relied on, had conspired to destroy her biggest deal, and she'd been so blind to it that she'd fired the one person who might have stopped it earlier. Ms. Grant? Roger's voice was gentle. Whenever you're ready. She turned to face the room. Caleb was there too, having sent Lily back to the employee lounge with Rachel and a promise of hot chocolate. His presence steadied her somehow, a reminder that not everyone had betrayed her trust. Frank, Evelyn said quietly, start from the beginning. When did this start? Frank's voice was hoarse. 8 months ago. Right after you fired David Kemp, he came to me afterward, angry and bitter. Said you destroyed his career for trying to protect the building. Said you didn't care about anything except profits and deals. And you believed him? I believed he got fired for doing his job. Same as happened to Moore yesterday. Same as happens to people like us all the time. Frank met her eyes. Kemp said he had connections. People who were interested in seeing Grant Industries fail. People who'd pay good money for inside information about vulnerabilities in the building systems. Evelyn felt ice in her veins. He was selling corporate espionage. He said he was exposing the truth, that your company cut corners on safety, ignored maintenance, put profits over people. He wanted me to document everything, every deferred repair, every ignored warning, every system running past its safe operating parameters. Did you? Frank nodded slowly. At first, I thought he was going to use it for a lawsuit, wrongful termination. Maybe go to the press, expose poor building maintenance. I figured you deserved it for firing him. He paused. I didn't know he was working with someone on your executive team. Jennifer Walsh made a sound like a wounded animal. I wasn't working with Kemp. I'd never even met him until... She stopped, her face going pale. Until when? Evelyn's voice was sharp. Until 3 months ago. He contacted me through an encrypted email, said he had information about serious safety violations in the building, said as VP of Operations, I had a legal obligation to investigate. And you didn't think to tell me? I thought you already knew. I thought you were deliberately ignoring the problems to avoid the cost of fixing them. Jennifer's voice cracked. The documentation Kemp provided was damning, Evelyn. Years of maintenance requests marked low priority, safety systems running at half capacity, emergency protocols that hadn't been tested in 18 months. It looked like you were running this building into the ground to save money. Caleb spoke for the first time, his voice carefully neutral. Those maintenance requests were mine, every one of them. And they weren't marked low priority by Ms. Grant. They were downgraded at the facility's management level. All eyes turned to Frank. I had budget constraints, he said defensively. I couldn't fix everything at once. I had to prioritize. You had to prioritize keeping the systems degraded, Caleb said, because that's what Kemp wanted. Evidence of negligence. Proof that the building was unsafe. Ammunition for whatever he was planning. Frank's silence was answer enough. Jennifer wrapped her arms around herself. Kemp told me the Henderson merger would make everything worse. Said Henderson's restructuring plans included massive cuts to building operations. That within 6 months of the merger closing, half the maintenance staff would be laid off and the rest would be stretched so thin that real disaster was inevitable. Did you verify that? Evelyn asked. I tried. I asked Marcus to review the merger terms. He said there were provisions for operational restructuring, but nothing specific about maintenance layoffs. Tom Chen's lawyer leaned forward. My client would like it noted that he was brought into this situation under false pretenses. He was told the goal was to delay the merger for additional due diligence, not to sabotage building systems. Your client, Evelyn said coldly, provided Jennifer with confidential merger timeline information. He knew exactly when Henderson's team would be in the building for final contract signing. He knew when maximum disruption would cause maximum damage to the deal. Tom's face had gone gray. I thought we were protecting the company. Jennifer showed me Kemp's documentation, showed me projections of what would happen after the merger. She said if we could just delay things, give the board time to review the safety issues, they might reconsider the Henderson terms. So you gave her my calendar, my meeting schedules, confidential information about when Henderson would be most vulnerable. I gave her dates, Tom said weakly. I didn't know she was going to... He looked at Frank. I didn't know there would be sabotage. I swear, I thought it was just going to be a computer glitch, something technical that would postpone the signing. Frank's laugh was bitter. A computer glitch. Right, because building automation systems just randomly fail in ways that perfectly coincide with billion-dollar mergers. I'm not an engineer. I don't know how these things work. No, you just know how to betray the person who trusted you for 8 years. Evelyn's voice was ice. How to leak confidential information. How to conspire with people planning corporate sabotage. How to endanger 23 lives because you were angry about not getting the promotion you thought you deserved. Tom flinched like he'd been slapped. Roger cleared his throat. Ms. Grant, we've been trying to locate David Kemp. According to his last known address, he moved out 6 weeks ago. No forwarding information. His phone number is disconnected. He disappeared, Evelyn said. After setting everything in motion, after recruiting Frank and manipulating Jennifer and feeding Tom's resentment, he created the conspiracy and then vanished before it could blow up in his face. Smart, Caleb said quietly. Plant the seeds, water them with resentment and fear, then step back and let nature take its course. When the building failed, he'd be hundreds of miles away with an airtight alibi. Jennifer was crying now, mascara running down her face. He said he was trying to save lives, said the building was a death trap waiting to happen, said as leaders we had a moral obligation to stop the merger before people got hurt. And you believed him because it gave you permission to do what you already wanted, Evelyn said. To stop a deal you disagreed with, to maintain your authority over operations, to prove you were right, and I was wrong. I was trying to protect. You were trying to control. There's a difference. Evelyn moved to the table, her hands flat on its surface. Every single person in this room chose to believe the worst about me because it justified what you wanted to do anyway. Frank wanted recognition and better budgets. Jennifer wanted to kill the Henderson deal. Tom wanted the promotion he felt entitled to. And all of you convinced yourselves you were the heroes while you nearly killed 23 people. The room fell silent, except for Jennifer's quiet sobbing. What happens now? Frank asked finally. Evelyn looked at Roger. What does legal say? They recommend criminal charges for corporate sabotage, conspiracy, and reckless endangerment. Civil suits will likely follow. We're also obligated to report the incident to federal regulators since building systems safety is involved. Roger's expression was grim. This is going to be a major scandal, the kind that tanks stock prices and destroys careers. Good, Evelyn said flatly. Everyone involved deserves exactly that. Ms. Grant, Jennifer started, you nearly killed Sarah Chen. 26 years old, just promoted, having a panic attack in a stalled elevator because she thought she was going to die. You nearly killed Marcus Williams, who has a 6-month-old daughter at home. Nearly killed James Torres, whose wife is pregnant with twins. Every single one of those 23 people had lives, families, futures, and you risked all of it because you thought you knew better than me. We were trying to help. You were trying to play vigilante without understanding the consequences. And now you get to face them. Evelyn nodded to Roger. Call the police. File formal charges. I want everyone involved prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Tom's lawyer stood abruptly. Ms. Grant, my client is willing to cooperate fully with investigators in exchange for consideration. Your client can cooperate or not. Either way, he's done here. All of them are. She looked at each person in turn. You're all terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You'll receive final paychecks and COBRA paperwork, and you'll never work in this industry again if I have anything to say about it. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. Evelyn, please, I have a mortgage, student loans, I can't. You should have thought about that before you conspired to commit corporate sabotage. Evelyn's voice softened slightly, but only slightly. I'm not unsympathetic to your situation, Jennifer. But consequences exist for a reason. You endangered lives. You betrayed trust. You broke the law. And now you pay the price. Roger motioned to his security team. Gentlemen, if you'll escort these individuals to collect their personal belongings and then off the premises. As they were let out, Tom still protesting, Jennifer still crying, Frank silent and defeated, Caleb moved to stand beside Evelyn. That was hard, he said quietly. That was necessary. She watched through the glass walls as her former executives disappeared toward the elevators. I trusted them, promoted them, built this company with them, and they betrayed everything we worked for. They convinced themselves they were doing the right thing. That's the dangerous part. Not villains who know they're villains, but people who think they're heroes. Like I thought I was a hero when I fired you for trying to protect the building. Caleb was quiet for a moment. You made a mistake. They made a choice. There's a difference. Is there? I chose to believe you were a security risk instead of listening to why you were accessing those systems. I chose my ego and my rules over your 15 years of service. How is that different from what they did? Because when you realized you were wrong, you admitted it. You came to my apartment, asked for help, changed your mind about who I was and what I was worth. He met her eyes. They never did that. Even when Frank was sitting in that stairwell, even when Jennifer was confessing, they were still justifying it, still blaming you for making them do it. That's the difference. Evelyn wanted to believe that, wanted to draw a clear line between her mistakes and their conspiracy. But the truth was messier than that. I created the environment that made this possible, she said. The culture that valued credentials over experience. that ignored maintenance until things broke, that made people like you and Frank feel invisible. They're responsible for what they did, but I'm responsible for creating a place where it could happen. So what are you going to do about it? She thought about that question, about the tower standing 78 floors above the city, about the people working inside it who deserved better than what she'd been giving them. I'm going to change everything, she said finally, starting with figuring out who the hell David Kemp was really working for. Caleb pulled out his tablet. Already on it, I've been digging into Kemp's background, his termination, his work history, his financial records. How did you access his financial records? I didn't, but I did notice some interesting patterns in his employment file. Before he worked here, he was at Meridian Properties. Before that, Silverstone Development. Before that, Coastal Towers Management. All building management companies. All competitors of Grant Industries, and all companies that have tried and failed to acquire your contracts over the years. Caleb pulled up a document. But here's what's interesting. Each time Kemp left one of those companies, it was right before they made a major play for a Grant Industries client. And each time, the play failed because of some kind of building systems issue that made Grant look more reliable by comparison. Evelyn's mind raced. He was sabotaging competitors to make us look good? Or he was gathering intelligence, learning building systems from the inside, building a resume that would eventually get him hired here. Caleb zoomed in on a date. He started working for Grant Industries 2 years ago, right after we announced plans for the Henderson merger. Someone planted him here. Someone who knew that deal was coming before it was public. Someone who wanted inside knowledge of your systems so they could sabotage them at exactly the right moment. Evelyn pulled out her phone and called Roger. I need you to look into David Kemp's employment application. Who recommended him for the facilities engineer position? Who interviewed him? Who made the final hiring decision? Roger's response came back 2 minutes later, and when Evelyn heard it, she felt the floor drop out from under her. Marcus Reeves. He recommended Kemp personally, said he was a family friend who needed a fresh start. Caleb's expression darkened. Your lawyer brought in the saboteur. My lawyer planted a corporate spy in my facilities department and then spent 2 years waiting for the perfect moment to activate him. Evelyn's hands were shaking. The Henderson merger was Marcus's idea from the beginning. He structured the deal, negotiated the terms. He knew every detail, so he could know exactly how to destroy it. But why? What does Marcus gain from killing the merger? He'd lose his commission, his prestige, his... She stopped. Unless he was never working for me at all. Caleb was already typing. Give me 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. Evelyn paced the conference room, her mind spinning through 2 years of meetings, decisions, strategy sessions with Marcus. He'd been her trusted advisor, her legal architect, the man who structured every major deal she'd made in the past 5 years. What else had he been? Got it, Caleb said. Marcus Reeves is on the board of directors for Titan Ventures. Want to guess who Titan's primary holding is? Tell me. Meridian Properties, one of Grant Industries' biggest competitors. They've been trying to acquire your client base for years. Caleb pulled up more documents. And according to these financial filings, Titan was positioning for a hostile takeover of Grant Industries. But they couldn't move forward while you were growing, while you were strong, while the Henderson merger was going to make you untouchable. So Marcus sabotages the merger, tanks my credibility, crashes the stock price, and Titan swoops in to acquire the company for pennies on the dollar. With Marcus positioned to take over as CEO of the combined entity. He gets your empire, your clients, your building, everything, and all he had to do was burn it down first. Evelyn felt rage like she'd never experienced before. He was at the merger signing yesterday, sitting right there while the building went dark, while people were trapped, while his sabotage nearly killed 23 employees, and he just sat there taking notes like nothing was happening. Because he knew it was going to happen. Probably had his Titan contacts ready to make an offer the moment your stock started falling. She grabbed her phone. Roger, I need you to find Marcus Reeves right now. Don't let him leave the building. Don't let him make any calls. And get our securities lawyer on the phone. We're filing charges for insider trading, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Ms. Grant, he left 20 minutes ago. Said he had a meeting with outside counsel. Find him, now, and freeze all his access to company systems. I want him completely locked out. She hung up and turned to Caleb. We need proof. Everything you found is circumstantial. We need evidence that directly links Marcus to the sabotage. The only person who can provide that is Kemp, and he's in the wind. Then we find him. Evelyn was already moving toward the door. You said he moved out 6 weeks ago. Someone knows where he went. Landlords, utility companies, credit card records. Nobody disappears completely. That's going to take time we might not have. If Marcus knows we're on to him, he'll destroy evidence, cover his tracks. Then we move faster than he can cover them. She paused at the door. Can you track his building access? See if he's been in areas he shouldn't have been? Caleb pulled up the badge access logs. He's been careful, nothing obviously suspicious, but he stopped, his eyes widening. Wait. 3 days ago, Marcus accessed the server room. His badge shows he was there for 47 minutes. What was he doing? According to the system notes, he was conducting a security audit, reviewing access logs for the Henderson merger due diligence, which gave him perfect cover to access the same systems Frank was sabotaging. And to plant something, a backup trigger maybe, or evidence that would implicate someone else if the primary sabotage was discovered. Caleb was already running diagnostics. I need to physically check those servers, see if there's anything that shouldn't be there. They took the elevator down to the basement, moving fast. The server room was cold and loud, with the sound of cooling systems and whirring drives. Caleb moved through the racks with practiced efficiency, checking connections, examining hardware. There, he said suddenly. That's not standard. He pointed to a small device attached to one of the network switches. It looked like it belonged there. Professional installation, proper cable management, but something about it was wrong. What is it? Evelyn asked. Remote access device. Allows someone to control the building systems from outside the network. Bypass all the security protocols. He carefully disconnected it. This is how they did it. This is how someone triggered the cascade failure without being physically present in the building. Can you trace where the signal went? Maybe, if I can access the device's logs. He pulled out a laptop and connected the device. This is going to take a few minutes. While he worked, Evelyn's phone rang. Roger. Mrs. Grant, we found Marcus. He's at the airport. TSA just flagged him trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. Hold him. Tell TSA we're filing a police report for corporate espionage. Don't let him on that plane. Already done. Airport police have him in custody. They're asking if you want to press charges. Absolutely. I'm on my way. She turned to Caleb. Can you handle this? I've got it. Go. He didn't look up from his laptop. And Evelyn, make him pay for what he did. The drive to the airport took 30 minutes that felt like 30 seconds. Evelyn's mind was racing with everything Marcus had done. Every meeting where he'd sat across from her offering advice while planning her destruction. Every contract he'd structured with hidden vulnerabilities. Every moment he'd smiled and lied and betrayed her trust. Airport police had him in a small holding room. Marcus sat at a metal table looking exactly like what he was. A man who'd gambled everything and lost. His expensive suit was rumpled. His carefully styled hair was disheveled. His lawyer's mask had finally slipped to reveal the desperate criminal underneath. Evelyn, he said when she walked in, I can explain. David Kemp, she interrupted. Your family friend who needed a fresh start. Where is he? I don't know what you're talking about. You recommended him for the facilities engineer position 2 years ago. Put him right in the heart of our building systems. And then you waited while he spent 2 years documenting vulnerabilities and recruiting people like Frank Delgado to help execute your sabotage. That's speculation. You have no proof. We have the remote access device you planted in the server room 3 days ago, the one that let you trigger the cascade failure from wherever you were. We have badge access logs showing you in restricted areas. We have financial records linking you to Meridian Properties and Titan Ventures. She leaned across the table. And we have Frank Delgado ready to testify that Kemp approached him 8 months ago with an offer to document building safety violations. Frank's going to cooperate fully with prosecutors. So is Jennifer Walsh. So is Tom Chen. They're all going to explain exactly how you orchestrated this conspiracy. Marcus's face had gone pale. They can't prove I was involved. I never communicated directly with any of them. No, you used Kemp as your cutout. Smart. Except Kemp made a mistake. He kept records. Insurance, probably, in case you tried to throw him under the bus. She smiled coldly. And my people are going to find those records. They're going to trace every payment, every communication, every connection between you and him and the conspiracy to destroy my company. You can't. I can. And I will. Because you didn't just try to destroy a business deal, Marcus. You endangered lives. 23 people trapped in elevators because you wanted to engineer a hostile takeover. Sarah Chen having a panic attack. Marcus Williams thinking about his baby daughter. All those people terrified they were going to die because you wanted control of my company. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. The words burst out of him. The cascade was supposed to be controlled. A few hours of disruption, enough to spook Henderson, enough to crater your stock price. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. But they did. Because you're not as smart as you think you are. Because sabotage is chaos, and chaos can't be controlled. She straightened. You're done, Marcus. Your career is over. Your reputation is destroyed. And you're going to prison for a very long time. Wait. His hand shot out like he wanted to grab her arm, but the airport police officer stepped forward. Wait. I can give you Kemp. I can tell you where he is, who he's working with, everything. But I need a deal. Immunity for my testimony. You're not getting immunity. You're getting prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Then you'll never find Kemp. He's too smart, too careful. He planned this for years. He has resources you can't imagine. Without my testimony, you'll never prove the full extent of the conspiracy. Evelyn considered that. Considered letting Marcus trade his knowledge for a lighter sentence. Considered the satisfaction of destroying every person involved in the plot against her company. Then she thought about Caleb Moore, sitting in that basement server room, patiently tracing digital breadcrumbs. About Lily's words in the stairwell, that fixing mistakes was how you stopped being the bad guy. About her own promise to change everything. Keep your testimony, she said. We'll find Kemp ourselves. And when we do, he's going to tell us everything anyway. Because that's what people do when they realize there's no way out. They talk, they cooperate, they try to save themselves. She turned toward the door. You had that chance, Marcus, in the conference room this morning, when I gave everyone the opportunity to come forward. You chose to run instead. Now you get to live with that choice. She walked out of the holding room and didn't look back. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. Found something. You need to see this. Now. She was already heading for her car when the second text came through. Kemp isn't in the wind. He's in the building, and he's not finished yet. Evelyn's heart stopped. She called Caleb immediately, her hands shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. What do you mean he's in the building? The remote access device I pulled from the server room, it's been logging connection attempts for the past hour. Someone's trying to access the building automation system from inside the network, from a terminal on the 42nd floor. The 42nd floor. Executive offices, conference rooms, and the main data center that housed backups of every critical system in the building. I'm 20 minutes away, Evelyn said, already running toward her car. Get security up there now. Lock down that floor. Don't let anyone in or out. Already done. But Evelyn, Caleb's voice was tense. The access attempts aren't random. Whoever's doing this knows exactly what they're looking for. They're trying to delete files, emails, security footage, everything that could tie the conspiracy together. Can you stop them? I'm trying, but they've got admin credentials, high-level access. It's taking time to lock them out without crashing the whole system. Just keep them busy. I'm on my way. She drove faster than she should have, running red lights, weaving through traffic with her hazards flashing. The tower rose ahead of her like a beacon, and somewhere inside it, David Kemp was trying to erase the evidence of what he'd done. She called Roger as she pulled into the parking garage. Status? We've got the 42nd floor sealed. 2 security officers on each stairwell, all elevator access disabled. Whoever's up there isn't getting out. Who's on that floor right now? According to the badge logs, nobody. The floor should be empty. Then how did Kemp get in? Silence. Then Roger's voice, grim. He must have cloned someone's badge, or he never left. Could have been hiding in the building since before we started looking for him. Evelyn thought about that. About someone living in the walls of her tower like a ghost, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, about how many hiding places there were in 78 floors, about how easy it would be for someone who understood the building's systems to stay invisible. She reached the executive elevator and used her override code. The car shot upward, the numbers climbing faster than her racing heartbeat. 65. 70. 75. The doors opened on the 42nd floor to controlled chaos. Roger's security team had set up a perimeter. Caleb was there too, his laptop open, his fingers flying across the keyboard. And standing beside him, clutching her purple unicorn backpack, was Lily. "What is she doing here?" Evelyn demanded. Caleb didn't look up from his screen. "Mrs. Chen had an emergency. Rachel's watching her, but Lily wanted to see where I worked. I couldn't exactly leave her alone." "Daddy's catching the bad guy," Lily said seriously, "like a superhero." "Baby, I told you to stay with Rachel in the lounge. But you need help, and I'm good at finding things." She held up a tablet that Evelyn recognized as one of the company's standard issue devices. "See? I found the person." Evelyn's breath caught. "What?" Lily turned the tablet around. On the screen was security camera footage from the 42nd floor, time-stamped 30 minutes ago. A figure in maintenance coveralls moved through the frame, their face turned away from the camera. But when they reached for a door handle, their sleeve rode up, revealing a distinctive watch, silver with a black face, an unusual chronograph design. Caleb's fingers froze on his keyboard. "Frank has a watch like that. I gave it to him 5 years ago. Christmas bonus I saved up for." "So Kemp stole Frank's watch? Or Frank is Kemp?" Caleb's voice was hollow. "Or they're working together and we've been played from the beginning." Evelyn's mind raced back through everything Frank had said in the stairwell. His confession, his broken apology, his promise to tell them everything. What if it had all been theater? What if he'd given them Jennifer and Tom as sacrifices while protecting the real architect of the conspiracy? "Pull up Frank's employment file," she ordered. "Everything. Background check, references, work history." Caleb was already typing. The file appeared on screen and Evelyn scanned it rapidly. Frank Delgado, hired 12 years ago, previously worked at Coastal Towers Management, before that at Silverstone Development, before that... Wait, she pointed at the screen. Coastal Towers. That's one of the companies Kemp worked for. 3 years before Frank came to Grant Industries. Caleb pulled up more records. But look at the dates. Kemp left Coastal in March 2013. Frank was hired at Grant in June 2013, 3 months apart. They knew each other. They worked together at Coastal, and then they both ended up here. With Frank in facilities management and Kemp positioned to be hired years later when the Henderson merger started taking shape. Caleb's expression was grim. This wasn't a 2-year plan. This was a 12-year infiltration. Roger's radio crackled. "Sir, we've got movement in the data center. Someone's inside." "Lock it down," Evelyn ordered. "Now!" They ran down the hallway, Roger's team surrounding them. The data center door was ajar, its electronic lock overridden. Inside, the temperature was Arctic, the sound of server fans deafening. Rows of equipment stretched into the darkness, blinking lights creating a constellation of red and green stars. And standing at the main console, frantically typing, was Frank Delgado. "Frank, step away from the terminal," Roger commanded, his hand on his sidearm. Frank's hand stilled. He turned slowly, and Evelyn saw something in his face that hadn't been there in the stairwell. Not defeat, not remorse. Cold calculation. "You weren't supposed to figure it out this fast," he said. "Where's Kemp?" Evelyn demanded. Frank smiled. It was a terrible expression, empty of warmth. "You're looking at him. David Kemp was an identity I created 8 months ago. A ghost with just enough history to be believable. I knew Marcus would bite if I dangled the right bait. A disgruntled engineer with inside knowledge, connections to competitors, a grudge against Evelyn Grant. He couldn't resist. So you manipulated Marcus into thinking he was manipulating you. Marcus wanted to acquire Grant Industries. I gave him the tools to try. But the real goal was never about the merger. It was about destroying you completely." Frank's voice carried years of buried rage. 12 years, Evelyn. 12 years I've worked in your basement, keeping your building running, fixing problems you created. Watching less qualified people get promoted above me. And for what? A paycheck that barely covers rent? A title that means nothing? The privilege of being invisible? So this was revenge. This was justice. You and people like you build empires on the backs of people you never see. You take credit for success that wouldn't exist without us. You fire people like Caleb Moore for doing their jobs because it's inconvenient for your schedules. His eyes burned with intensity. I wanted you to lose everything the way I've lost everything. I wanted you to know what it feels like to be powerless. Caleb stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. You trained me, Frank. Taught me to take pride in the work, to understand that maintaining systems is noble, that keeping people safe matters more than recognition. Was that all a lie? Something flickered in Frank's expression. I meant it when I said it, but meaning it doesn't pay the bills, doesn't get you promoted, doesn't make you matter to people like her. So you endangered 23 lives to prove a point about not mattering? I saved those lives! Frank's composure cracked. When the Cascade failure went further than I calculated, when those elevators stalled, I could have walked away. I could have let them die and blamed it on deferred maintenance, on budget cuts, on Evelyn's negligence. But I didn't. I tried to fix it, and when I couldn't, I let you fix it. Because despite everything, I'm not a murderer. No, you're just a saboteur who lost control of his own plan, Evelyn said. You wanted to destroy my credibility, but you couldn't stomach the body count. So you let Caleb save everyone and convinced yourself that made you less guilty. I convinced myself nothing. I know exactly what I am. Frank turned back to the console. And now I'm finishing what I started, deleting every trace of the conspiracy, every email, every access log, every piece of evidence that could connect me to the sabotage. By the time I'm done, you won't be able to prove anything. We already have Marcus in custody, Evelyn said. He's cooperating, telling us everything about the Titan Ventures connection, the hostile takeover plan, your role in it all. Marcus knows nothing. I fed him just enough information to make him think he was in control. But the real evidence, the communications, the payments, the proof of how deep this goes, that's all on these servers. And in about 30 seconds, it's all going to be permanently erased. Roger, Evelyn said quietly. The security director moved forward, but Frank pulled something from his pocket, a small device with a single red button. Don't, Frank said. This is a dead man switch. Stops transmitting my heartbeat, and the building automation system crashes. Everything I rebuilt yesterday gets destroyed again. Only this time, it won't be 23 people in elevators. It'll be everyone in the building when the fire suppression systems fail and the emergency exits lock and the backup power doesn't come on. Lily's small voice cut through the tension. You're lying! Everyone turned to look at her. She stood beside her father, the tablet still in her hands, her expression fearless. How would you know? Frank asked, his voice softer when addressing the child. Because my daddy taught me about building systems. He showed me the pictures and explained how everything connects. And a dead man's switch doesn't work like that. You'd need direct access to the control systems, not just a button. And you don't have that anymore because Daddy locked you out. Caleb's eyes widened. He looked at his laptop, then at Frank. She's right. The remote access device I pulled. That was your last back door into the system. You're bluffing. Frank's hand tightened on the device. You want to bet 23 lives on that? Bet on a child's understanding of systems she's never actually seen? I'll bet on my daughter's intelligence over your desperation any day. Caleb moved closer, his body positioning between Frank and Lily. You taught me to document everything, Frank. Every access, every override, every system modification. I learned from the best. So even if you delete the files on this server, I have backups, timestamps showing every sabotage event, maintenance logs proving you deliberately degraded critical systems, security footage of you accessing restricted areas. That's circumstantial at best. And the remote access device has your fingerprints on it, your DNA, physical evidence linking you directly to the Cascade failure. Caleb's voice was steady, relentless. You're done, Frank. The only question is whether you walk out of here quietly or make this worse by actually hurting people. Frank looked at the device in his hand, at the console behind him where deletion progress bars were steadily advancing, at Evelyn standing with her arms crossed, implacable as the tower itself, at Roger's security team surrounding him with weapons drawn, and at Lily, this 8-year-old girl who'd seen through his bluff with the clarity of someone who believed the world should be fair. "I just wanted to matter," he said finally, his voice breaking. "Just wanted someone to see the work and say it was important, say I was important." "You did matter," Caleb said quietly. "You taught half the maintenance staff in this building. You kept critical systems running for 12 years. You saved my career when I was struggling as a new father trying to figure out how to do this job and raise Lily alone. You mattered, Frank. You just couldn't see it. Because mattering doesn't pay rent, doesn't earn promotions, doesn't—" Frank's voice caught. "Doesn't change the fact that I'm 53 years old with no degree, no prospects, and no way out of the basement except sabotage." Evelyn spoke then, her voice carrying none of its earlier steel. "You're right. I didn't see you, didn't value the work you did, didn't create a culture where people like you could advance based on skill instead of credentials. That's on me. But what you did, endangering lives, conspiring with Marcus, manipulating Jennifer and Tom, that's on you. And now you have to face the consequences." Frank looked at her for a long moment. Then he set the device on the console, gently, carefully, like it was something precious, and raised his hands. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I'm done." Roger's team moved in immediately, securing him with practiced efficiency. Frank didn't resist, just stood there with his hands cuffed behind his back, looking smaller and older than he had moments before. "The deletion program," Evelyn said. "Can you stop it?" Caleb was already at the console, his fingers flying. "It's encrypted. He set it up to resist interruption. I can slow it down, but I can't stop it completely." "How long do we have?" 5 minutes? Maybe less?" Lily tugged on Evelyn's sleeve. "Miss Grant? Can I try?" Evelyn looked down at this child who'd been in the building less than 48 hours and had somehow become central to unraveling everything. "Try what, sweetheart?" "My daddy taught me about system passwords. He said people always pick things that mean something to them, things they can remember." She looked at Frank. "What's important to you, Mr. Frank?" Frank's expression was unreadable. "Why would I tell you?" "Because you said you're not a murderer. And if those files get deleted, the bad people who helped you might get away. Miss Jennifer and Mr. Tom and Mr. Marcus, they did bad things too. Don't they deserve consequences like you?" The logic was so pure, so devastatingly simple, that Frank actually smiled. "You're a smart kid. Your dad's lucky to have you." "I know, so what's your password?" Frank was quiet for so long that Evelyn thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Coastal 2013. The year I thought everything would be different. The year I came to Grant Industries believing I could build a real career here." Lily repeated it carefully to Caleb, who typed it in. The deletion program stopped immediately, progress frozen at 67%. "We've got it," Caleb said, relief flooding his voice. "We've got everything. Email chains between Frank and Marcus, payment records showing money flowing from Titan Ventures, access logs proving the sabotage. It's all here." Roger was already on his radio, coordinating with the police who were en route. Frank stood quietly, watching as evidence of his conspiracy was secured and preserved. Can I ask you something?" he said to Evelyn. "Go ahead." "If none of this had happened, if I just kept doing my job, kept being invisible, would you ever have noticed me? Would you ever have cared about the person keeping your building alive?" Evelyn thought about lying, about giving him some comfortable platitude about how she valued all her employees, but she owed him honesty, even now. "Probably not," she said. "I was so focused on building higher that I stopped paying attention to the foundation. I stopped seeing the people who made everything possible. That's going to change. But you're right. It shouldn't have taken a disaster to make me see it." Frank nodded slowly. "At least you're honest about it. That's more than most people in your position would be." The police arrived then, and Frank was led away. Marcus's name was added to the arrest warrants. Jennifer and Tom would face additional charges for their knowing participation in the conspiracy. The whole tangled mess would take months to unravel in court. But Grant Tower still stood. The Henderson merger was secure. And for the first time in 12 years, Evelyn understood what she'd been missing. 3 weeks later, Evelyn stood in the newly renovated facilities management office on the third floor. It was no longer a basement dungeon with fluorescent lights and metal desks. Now it had windows, ergonomic furniture, a proper break room, and most importantly, visibility. The entire maintenance staff was gathered, 23 men and women who kept the building running, most of whom Evelyn had never met before. She knew all their names now, had interviewed each one personally, had asked about their families, their goals, their ideas for improving building operations. "I want to introduce our new VP of Building Operations," she said, gesturing to the man standing beside her. "Caleb Moore has agreed to take this position on the condition that we completely restructure how we think about facilities management. No more deferred maintenance, no more low-priority classifications for critical systems, and no more invisible people." The staff applauded. Caleb looked uncomfortable with the attention, but accepted it with grace. "I also want to announce a new scholarship program," Evelyn continued. "Any employee who wants to pursue additional education or professional certifications will receive full tuition coverage and flexible scheduling, because skill and experience matter more than credentials, and it's past time we recognize that." More applause. She saw several people wiping their eyes. "Finally, I want to acknowledge that what happened 3 weeks ago was partly my failure. I created a culture where people felt invisible, where good work went unrecognized, where the foundation was taken for granted while I focused on building higher. That changes now. Every person in this building matters. Every role is essential. And if anyone ever feels like they're not being seen or heard, they have my personal email, and my door is always open." After the meeting, she found Lily in Caleb's new office, drawing pictures at his desk. The girl had become a regular presence in the building, stopping by after school to do homework in her father's office and charming everyone she met. "What are you drawing?" Evelyn asked. Lily held up the picture, a tall building with stick figures at every level, all of them smiling. "It's the tower, but in my picture, everyone can see each other, even the people in the basement. I like that version better than the real thing." "Daddy says you're going to make the real thing more like my picture." "I'm going to try." Evelyn sat down beside her. "Lily, I want to thank you for what you said to Mr. Frank about consequences and fairness. You helped us stop him." Lily considered that seriously. "Is Mr. Frank going to jail?" "Yes. For a long time." "Good. He did bad things, and he has to be punished. But—" She looked up with those achingly clear eyes. "Does he have any kids? Anyone who needs him?" "No, he lived alone." "That's sad. Maybe that's why he was so angry, because he didn't have anybody." She went back to her drawing. "My daddy says everyone needs somebody. That's why we take care of each other." Caleb appeared in the doorway, catching the end of the conversation. "Ready to go home, baby? Mrs. Chen's making enchiladas for dinner." "Can Miss Grant come?" Both adults froze. Evelyn started to decline automatically. She had work, meetings, a dozen reasons why the CEO of Grant Industries couldn't have dinner with her VP of Building Operations and his 8-year-old daughter. Then she thought about the tower in Lily's drawing, about everyone being able to see each other, about what she'd promised to change. "I'd love to," she said. "If you don't mind the company." Caleb's surprise melted into a genuine smile. "We'd be honored." Mrs. Chen's enchiladas were the best thing Evelyn had eaten in months, possibly years. She sat at Caleb's small kitchen table, listening to Lily chatter about school and her friends, and a book she was reading about space exploration. The apartment was modest but warm, full of the kind of lived-in comfort that Evelyn's pristine penthouse had never achieved. "Your daughter is remarkable," she told Caleb while Lily was brushing her teeth before bed. "She's my whole world. Everything I do, every choice I make, it's all for her." "I understand that now. When I fired you in front of her, I didn't see what I was taking away. Not just your job, but her security, her faith in fairness, her belief that hard work matters. You gave it back when you came to my apartment and asked for help. She saw that too. Saw that even powerful people can admit mistakes and try to fix them. I'm still trying to fix them. The culture I created, the priorities I had, that's going to take years to undo. But you're doing it. That's what matters. He paused. I've been thinking about something Frank said, about wanting to matter, and I realized that's what we all want. Not recognition necessarily, or praise, or promotions, just to know that what we do means something to someone. You matter, Caleb, to Lily, to the people you trained, to this company. Evelyn met his eyes. To me, I wouldn't have a business left if you hadn't come back, wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn about what actually makes this empire worth having. Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, her purple unicorn backpack replaced by matching purple slippers. Will you tuck me in, Daddy? Of course, baby. Can Miss Grant come too? I want to show her my room. They followed Lily to her small bedroom, walls covered with crayon drawings and glow-in-the-dark stars, a bookshelf overflowing with stories, a desk where she did her homework, every surface showing evidence of a child who was loved and encouraged and seen. This is where I draw my buildings, Lily said, pointing to a stack of papers. Daddy helps me understand how the systems work, and then I draw them better. Someday, I'm going to design buildings that are beautiful and safe and where everyone matters. I believe you will, Evelyn said, and when you do, I hope you'll let me invest in your company. Lily grinned and climbed into bed. Caleb tucked the blankets around her with practiced tenderness, and Evelyn felt something crack in her chest. This was what she'd been missing. Not just seeing her employees, but understanding what they were working for. Understanding that behind every badge and job title was a whole life, a whole world of people who mattered. Good night, sweetheart, Caleb said, kissing his daughter's forehead. Night, Daddy. Night, Miss Grant. Good night, Lily. Thank you for letting me visit. Well, you can come back anytime. We have enchiladas every Thursday. Evelyn smiled. I'll remember that. Outside the apartment, standing in the hallway, Evelyn found herself reluctant to leave. Thank you for tonight, for letting me see this part of your life. Thank you for wanting to see it. A month ago, you wouldn't have. A month ago, I was a different person. I'm not sure I like who I was. You were someone focused on success and growth and building something that mattered. That's not a bad thing. You just forgot that buildings are made of people, not just steel and glass. I won't forget again. They stood there for a moment, two people who'd been enemies for one terrible morning and had somehow become something else. Not quite friends yet, but moving in that direction. I should go, Evelyn said finally. Early meeting tomorrow with the Henderson team. They want a tour of our facilities management operations. Apparently word got out about our restructuring and they're impressed. Good. They should be. Caleb smiled. You're building something real now, not just tall, but strong. Evelyn drove home thinking about that. About strength versus height. About foundations versus facades. About a little girl's drawing where everyone could see each other. The next morning, she arrived at Grant Tower just as the sun was touching its peak. 78 floors of glass and steel gleaming in the dawn light. But now, when she looked at it, she didn't just see her empire. She saw the people inside it. Saw names and faces and families. Saw the security guard who worked double shifts to pay for his son's college. Saw the administrative assistant who was taking night classes in business management. Saw the maintenance technician who'd invented a more efficient way to monitor HVAC systems. Saw all the people she'd spent 12 years not seeing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Sarah Chen from accounting wants to thank you personally for the paid leave after the elevator incident. Can I put her on your calendar? Evelyn typed back. Give her my cell number. She can call anytime. Another text. This one from Tom Chen's lawyer. Client wants to know if there's any possibility of a reduced sentence in exchange for additional cooperation. Evelyn considered that. Tom had been a willing participant in the conspiracy, but he'd also been manipulated by people smarter and more ruthless than he was. He'd cooperated fully with investigators, helped build the case against Marcus and Frank. She typed, Tell him to talk to the prosecutor. If they're satisfied with his cooperation, I won't object to reasonable consideration. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was recognition that people were complicated, that mistakes could be genuine, that consequences didn't have to be vengeance. The elevator carried her up to the executive floor, and she found herself thinking about Frank, about a 53-year-old man who'd spent 12 years feeling invisible, about how that kind of resentment could fester into something terrible. She made a mental note to implement quarterly reviews where employees could provide anonymous feedback about company culture, about feeling valued, about whether they felt seen. Rachel met her at the office door. "Ms. Grant, the Henderson team is here. They're in conference room A." "Perfect. Is Caleb joining us?" "He's already there, and he brought building schematics that show our new maintenance protocols. They're apparently very impressed with his presentation." Evelyn smiled. "Of course they are. Let's go." The meeting lasted 2 hours, and by the end of it, Henderson's CEO was talking about implementing similar operational restructuring at their own properties. They signed a consulting agreement on the spot, with Caleb heading up the advisory team. After they left, Evelyn found Caleb still in the conference room, packing up his materials. "That was brilliant," she said. "You just turned our crisis into a new revenue stream. I just showed them what should have been standard practice all along. Buildings don't maintain themselves. Systems don't run on wishful thinking. You need skilled people who understand what they're doing and feel valued enough to care." "Want to write that down? I'm thinking it should be the opening line of our new company mission statement." He laughed. "I'm an engineer, not a poet." "You're whatever you need to be. That's what I'm learning." She sat down across from him. "I've been thinking about something Lily said, about everyone needing somebody, about taking care of each other." "That sounds like her." "She's right. I built this company thinking I could do it alone. That success was about being stronger, smarter, more ruthless than everyone else. But the truth is, I only succeeded because people like you were holding up the foundation while I was focused on the view from the top." "You're being too hard on yourself." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally being honest." She met his eyes. "I want to build something different going forward. Not just a successful company, but a good one. The kind of place where people like Lily's drawing, where everyone can see each other and everyone matters." "That's ambitious." "I know, but I have a good team, a VP of building operations who understands what actually holds things together, a daughter who reminds me what fairness looks like, and a second chance I don't deserve, but am grateful for anyway." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "You know, when you fired me that morning, I thought my life was over, thought I'd lost everything that mattered." "I'm so sorry. Let me finish. I thought I'd lost everything. But what I actually lost was a job that didn't value me and a boss who couldn't see me. And what I gained was the chance to rebuild something better, to show my daughter that standing up for what's right matters more than keeping your head down, to help create the kind of workplace I always wished existed." "So you're saying getting fired was good for you?" "I'm saying maybe some things need to break before they can be fixed properly. Your company, my career, the way we see each other." He smiled. "Sometimes the fall is necessary for the rebuilding." Evelyn thought about that, about standing in the darkness of a powerless tower, realizing everything she'd built was hollow, about sitting in Frank's apartment admitting she'd been wrong, about watching 23 people walk out of stalled elevators and understanding what actually mattered. "The fall was necessary," she agreed, "but the rebuilding is better." 6 months later, Grant Tower had been transformed in ways both visible and invisible. The basement facilities office was now a state-of-the-art operations center. The maintenance staff had doubled, with competitive salaries and clear advancement paths. Employee satisfaction scores had risen 40%, and Evelyn knew the name of every person who worked in her building. The Henderson merger had been wildly successful. Grant Industries was expanding into 3 new markets. Stock prices were at an all-time high, and Evelyn's reputation had shifted from ruthless CEO to innovative leader who valued people as much as profits. Marcus Reeves was serving 8 years for corporate espionage and conspiracy. Frank Delgado had received 12 years, with possibility of parole in 7 if he continued cooperating with investigators. Jennifer Walsh and Tom Chen had both pleaded guilty to reduced charges and were serving probation with community service requirements. And on this particular Thursday evening, Evelyn was sitting at Caleb's kitchen table eating enchiladas and listening to Lily explain her science project about renewable energy systems. "So if we put solar panels on the roof of the tower," Lily was saying, "and connected them to the battery backup systems, we could generate our own power during the day and save it for emergencies at night." "That's brilliant," Evelyn said. "How much would something like that cost?" Lily pulled out a carefully calculated budget that showed research well beyond her 8 years. About $3 million for the full installation, but it would pay for itself in energy savings in 7 years, and it would make the building more sustainable and safer. Evelyn looked at Caleb. Did you help her with this? She did it herself. I just checked the math. He was clearly bursting with pride. Well, Lily, you've just sold me on a $3 million solar installation. I'll have the engineering team start on preliminary designs next week. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? You're really going to do it? Really. And I want you to be part of the planning process. You can meet with the engineers, review the designs, make sure we're doing it right. I'm only 8. You're only 8 and you just designed a renewable energy system that will make my building safer and more efficient. Age has nothing to do with good ideas. Evelyn smiled. Besides, in 10 years when you're ready for college, I want you to remember that Grant Industries takes innovation seriously. Maybe you'll come work for us. Maybe, Lily said seriously, but only if you promise to keep seeing people, all people, not just the ones in the tall offices. I promise. And if I ever forget, I'm counting on you to remind me. After dinner, after Lily had gone to bed and Caleb walked Evelyn to the door, he said quietly, You didn't have to do that. The solar panels, the consulting role for Lily, you've already done so much. I didn't do it because I had to. I did it because it's a good idea, and because your daughter is remarkable, and because, Evelyn paused, choosing her words carefully, because you changed my life, Caleb. Both of you. You showed me what I was missing, what actually matters. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago, and I'm grateful for that. We're grateful too. For the job, the opportunities, the chance to be part of building something good. He smiled. Lily thinks you're a superhero, you know, someone who made mistakes but fixed them, who learned to see people and made the world more fair. I'm not a superhero. I'm just someone trying to do better. That's what heroes are. People who try to do better even when it's hard. Evelyn drove home thinking about that, about heroes and villains and the space between, about little girls who believed in fairness and fathers who taught them the world could be good, about towers built on foundations of people who mattered. She thought about the badge that had hit the marble floor 6 months ago, and how that single moment had led to everything changing, how being humbled had taught her humility, how losing control had shown her what was worth controlling, how the man she'd fired had become the person she trusted most. Grant Tower stood against the night sky, 78 floors of glass and steel. But now when Evelyn looked at it, she saw more than her empire. She saw Sarah Chen going home to her family, saw the security guard whose son had just gotten into MIT, saw the maintenance technician whose efficiency innovation had saved the company $2 million, saw Caleb in his new office, building systems that would keep everyone safe, saw all the people who'd been invisible becoming seen. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Thank you for believing in my project. Daddy says I should always remember that smart people listen to good ideas no matter where they come from. You're smart, Miss Grant. Evelyn typed back. You're smarter, Lily. And someday you're going to build something amazing. I can't wait to see it. The response came immediately. I already am building something. Daddy and I are building a world where everyone matters, and you're helping. That makes us a team. Evelyn smiled, her eyes unexpectedly wet. A team. She'd built an empire alone and nearly lost everything because of it. Now she was building something better, not alone, but together with people who'd taught her what actually mattered. The tower still stood tall, reaching toward the sky, but its foundation was stronger than ever, because Evelyn Grant had finally learned to see the people holding everything up, had learned their names, their stories, their worth, had learned that power without people was hollow, that empires without empathy were fragile, that being right mattered less than doing right. She'd been the villain in a little girl's story, and through humility and hard work and the grace of second chances, had earned the opportunity to become something better. Not a hero exactly, but someone trying. And in the end, that was enough.